Chapter 1305. Burning Sky Array. Longao had seen the burning sky array in the burning sky array. Without a doubt, if one wanted to set up the burning sky array, unless one first broke through to the God-level array master, even an Emperor-level array master would not be able to set up the burning sky array. As for the power of the burning sky array, there was no suspense at all. Although the burning sky formation was not the strongest existence within the burning sky formation technique, the burning sky formation was the most destructive and terrifying formation. Longao was already enveloped by the burning sky array. However, could the burning sky array trap Longao? The burning sky array was powerful, but it could not interfere with spatial fluctuations. Longao could enter the dragon seal's space as he pleased. Longao's body disappeared. As for the reincarnation clone, it also disappeared without a trace. Yu Wuxuang was a little dumbfounded. Although he had already guessed that Longao could use the spatial artifact to temporarily hide his body, he still did not expect that Longao could also disappear within the burning sky array. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed it even if he was beaten to death. Longao, come out if you're a man and have a fair battle with me. Inside the burning sky array, Yu Wuxuang roared crazily because he did not know if Longao was still in the array. If he was not, wouldn't his efforts be in vain? The most helpless thing was that Yu Wuxuang knew very well that if Longao escaped this time, it meant that his array could not trap Longao at all. If that was the case, he would be doomed. Inside the dragon seal space, Longao ignored Yu Wuxuang's roar. He was thinking of a way to deal with it. If it was an open battle, he would not be afraid of Yu Wuxuang. So what if Yu Wuxuang was a heavenly god? With the help of the reincarnation clone, Longao was completely confident that he could kill Yu Wuxuang in the shortest amount of time. However, the problem now was that Yu Wuxuang did not fight him alone at all. Instead, he chose to attack with a formation. Longao knew his own limits when it came to formations. Although there was only a difference of one level between an Emperor-level array master and a God-level array master, the difference between the two was like the difference between heaven and earth. Not to mention anything else, just the burning sky array alone was something he had no way of breaking. How should he deal with Yu Wuxuang? At this moment, Longao was very anxious because the dragon sect and his family had all disappeared. He didn't even know who the other party was. The longer he delayed, the more danger his family would be in. Therefore, he had to get rid of Yu Wuxuang as soon as possible so that he could find out where his family was. To deal with Yu Wuxuang, one had to break the formation that Yu Wuxuang had set up first. Longao asked Long Fu about that directly. Long Fu, tell me, what should I do now? Master, Yu Wuxuang is very powerful in formations, but he has a fatal weakness. What is it? Hearing Long Fu's words, Longao was overjoyed and asked impatiently. Master, you might not know this, but according to my observations these few times, Yu Wuxuang's strength and formation skills are not bad. The only thing is that Yu Wuxuang's soul has been controlled by someone. Huh! If Long Fu hadn't said it himself, Longao definitely wouldn't have believed it. Yu Wuxuang's soul had been controlled by someone? Was that true? Long Fu, do you know who is controlling Yu Wuxuang's soul? Shaking his head, Long Fu said helplessly. I've tried to sense it, but the other party seems to be very powerful. If I was at my peak, I wouldn't have a problem. But now, I don't dare to sense it forcefully. Once I'm discovered, Master, you'll be in trouble. If even Long Fu was afraid, then Longao could totally imagine just what kind of powerful figure the other party was. Long Fu, what should I do? Master, since Yu Wuxuang's soul has been controlled by someone, it's a good thing for us. As long as we disturb his soul, I believe Yu Wuxuang's soul will be in chaos. At that time, Master, you can take the opportunity to kill him. So that was how it was. Brother Long, your soul slaves are the best weapons. Soul slaves? Longao smiled. Of course, Longao already knew what Bai Ling meant. Just as Bai Ling had said, soul slaves were refined from souls. If he released hundreds of soul slaves and entered Yu Wuxuang's body at the same time, he believed that Yi Wuxuang's soul would be in chaos. As long as he seized the opportunity, it wouldn't be impossible to kill Yi Wuxuang. He did as he said. Just as Longao was about to leave the Dragon Seal space and use the soul slaves to deal with Yi Wuxuang, Long Fu suddenly continued. Master, you must remember not to touch Yi Wuxuang's soul when you kill him, and don't be entangled by his soul. Why is that? Longao was very curious. Since he was going to kill Yi Wuxuang, he would definitely eliminate the root of the problem. Even if it was Yi Wuxuang's soul, he would not let it go. He would choose to kill it completely. How could he destroy it completely without touching the soul? Master, there's something you don't know. The person who's controlling Yi Wuxuang's god's soul should be a powerful martial artist. If you kill Yi Wuxuang and touch his god's soul or get entangled by it, that person will lock onto your aura. By then, won't you have an extra enemy for no reason? Longao nodded. In such troubled times, Longao was not willing to provoke more trouble, especially powerful martial artists. Longao chose hundreds of soul slaves. Among them, 3 were soul slaves and the rest were all low-level soul slaves. Even so, it was more than enough. Inside the burning sky formation, Yi Wuxuang roared crazily because he did not want to lose this opportunity. At this moment, Longao's figure suddenly appeared. He sneered and said, Yi Wuxuang, there's no need to shout. I'm right here. If you have the ability, come and kill me. Yi Wuxuang seemed to be a little surprised when he saw Longao suddenly appear. The more Longao acted like this, the more uncertain he felt. Under normal circumstances, Longao had finally left and would not appear. But in the end, Longao's strength and formation skills were clearly inferior to his. He believed that Longao knew this as well. Since that was the case, why did Longao return? Could there be a conspiracy? Longao. Waving his hand and not giving Yi Wuxuang a chance to speak, Longao said, Didn't you want to kill me? Coincidentally, I'm also preparing to clean up the sect for Master. I'll kill you within 3 moves. If you have any last words, feel free to say them. F*CKU. Yi Wuxuang was completely enraged. Longao's blatant words simply did not take him seriously. It would have been fine if the other party was a supreme divine Dao martial artist or a divine rank formation master, but the other party was only a mere deity martial artist and a low-level formation master, yet he was so arrogant. It was simply unbearable. The secret cave could tolerate it, but the chrysanthemum could not tolerate it. Chapter 1306. 3 moves. It was an insult to him. With a furious roar, Yi Wuxuang activated the burning sky formation. The endless flames around him surged toward Longao. Longao stood still, but hundreds of soul slaves suddenly shot out from his body toward Yi Wuxuang from all directions. Soul slaves were most afraid of flames. It could be said that flames and lightning were the nemesis of soul slaves. However, the soul slaves were extremely fast. Before Yi Wuxuang could react, hundreds of soul slaves had already arrived around Yi Wuxuang, surrounding him tightly. If it were other heavenly god martial artists, the soul slaves would not be able to enter at all. However, Yi Wuxuang's situation was different. His god's soul was controlled by the mysterious martial artist, giving the soul slaves a rare opportunity. Hundreds of soul slaves surged into Yi Wuxuang's body and began to attack his god's soul. One could imagine the power of hundreds of soul slaves attacking at the same time. The endless flames that were surging toward Longao disappeared instantly because Yi Wuxuang's god's soul was attacked. The burning sky formation disappeared as well. Ah! Longao, you'll regret this. Master, save me, save me! Hundreds of soul slaves attacked at the same time, not giving Yi Wuxuang any chance. In less than a few minutes, Yi Wuxuang's body fell. There was no aura, and he was clearly dead. Looking at the corpse on the ground, Longao finally let out a long sigh of relief. He knew very well that if Yi Wuxuang was not controlled by his god's soul, it would be thousands of times more difficult to kill him. It seemed like his luck was quite good. Master, please don't recall the soul slaves. Nodding, Longao knew very well what Long Fu meant. Hundreds of soul slaves had just attacked Yi Wuxuang's god's soul. If he recalled the soul slaves, he would definitely be targeted by the mysterious martial artist. By then, he would be in big trouble. Hundreds of soul slaves were forced out by Longao. As for the soul slaves, they would disappear automatically after leaving the Dragon Seal space for a long time. That was the biggest disadvantage of soul slaves. Right at that moment, Yi Wuxuang's body began to burn, and his god's soul turned into a ball of flames as well. Longao, you killed Yi Wuxuang. I'll come for you. Looking at his burning body and god's soul, Longao was completely dumbfounded. According to Long Fu, as long as he did not recall his soul slave and was not touched by Yi Wuxuang's god's soul, the mysterious martial artist controlling Yi Wuxuang's god's soul would not be able to lock onto him. But what was the result? Who are you? It was hard to imagine that not only could the other party control Yi Wuxuang's soul, but the other party even knew him. Could it be that the other party had already searched Yi Wuxuang's soul? That should be the case. Otherwise, it would be impossible for the other party to recognize him. Initially, he did not want to cause trouble, but the outcome was the exact opposite. Since the other party already knew who he was, there was no doubt that the mysterious martial artist who controlled Yi Wuxuang's soul would definitely come looking for him. He had stirred up trouble for no reason. Who exactly are you? Yi Wuxuang no longer looked human in the burning flames. Longao, you know me, and I know you. One day, we will meet again. The flames disappeared, and so did Yi Wuxuang's body and god's soul. The other party knew him, and he knew him too. Who was the other party? Long Fu, can you lock onto the other party's exact location? Master, with the help of Miss Xiling and Miss Bailing's power, we finally locked onto the mysterious martial artist who controlled Yi Wuxuang's soul. He's not in the 9 provinces, but in the Tianwu continent. The Tianwu continent. Longao had already thought of that. The reason was simple. The strongest person in the 9 provinces did not even have a divine Dao martial artist. To be able to control Yi Wuxuang's soul, the other party was at least a God Emperor martial artist, or even a Nirvana martial artist. After all, Yi Wuxuang was not only a heavenly God martial artist, but also a powerful God rank formation master. Long Fu, can you lock onto the specific martial artist? There's no other way. He felt a little helpless. Longao could almost be sure that the other party's strength was definitely very powerful. Who had he offended? He had offended such a powerful martial artist for no reason. The number of powerful martial artists that he knew could be counted on one hand. Could the other party be a formation master? After all, to be able to control Yi Wuxuang's soul, other than having powerful strength, one also seemed to have to suppress Yi Wuxuang's formation Dao. It was still the same saying. In the Tianwu continent, among the 10 forces, only the 10,000 formation sect was proficient in the formation Dao. Could the mysterious martial artist be a powerhouse from the Wanzhan school? He shrugged helplessly and did not continue to dwell on this question. Longao was very anxious about his family. As for the mysterious martial artist, that was a matter for the future. The most important thing now was to find his family as soon as possible. Not only Longao, but even Xiling, Bailing, and Long Fu began to look for clues, hoping to find their family as soon as possible. Tianwu continent. On the peak of a mountain, a black-clothed man sat on the ground. His eyes suddenly opened, and his face was very gloomy. If Longao was here and saw the black-clothed man, no one knew what kind of expression he would have because the black-clothed man was none other than Longao and Yi Wuxuang's master, Fentian. When Longao first met Fentian, he became his disciple in a daze and received the formation Dao. In order to repay the favor of teaching him, Longao did not hesitate to fight with Yi Wuxuang and almost died a few times. However, in the end, Fentian did not die at all and even controlled Yi Wuxuang's soul. With a gloomy face, Fentian suddenly laughed. His laughter was so eerie and terrifying, it was like dark clouds on a rainy day. Longao, You really did not disappoint me. Not bad, not bad. Junhing. After a short while, a burly man had already shot over. He seemed to be moving very slowly, but in fact, he was very fast. In the blink of an eye, he was already in front of Fentian. Lin Junhong, the master of Wanzhan's school. His strength might not be as strong as Tong Tiandi and the others, but no one in Tianwu continent dared to underestimate him. Lin Junhong's formation Dao was unfathomable. He was known as the person with the strongest formation Dao talent in the past 10,000 years in Wanzhan school. No one had seen Lin Junhong's formation Dao because almost everyone who had seen it was dead. It was also because of this that Tong Tiandi and the others were not willing to fight with Lin Junhong. After all, formation Dao was the most terrifying existence in a battle. It was done. Wanzhan school's strength was not good, but no one dared to provoke them because of Wanzhan school's formation Dao and formation masters. Formation masters were existences above martial artists. In the martial heaven continent there were far too few formation masters. Especially powerful formation masters, they were even rarer. Even the 10,000 formation sect didn't have many talented formation masters. Chapter 1307. Ancestor, is there something you need from me? Lin Junhong bowed respectfully to the ancestor in front of him without any disrespect. As the master of Wanzhan school, Lin Junhong could be said to be one of the top few people in Tianwu continent. Even so, Lin Junhong was still a little scared standing in front of Fentian. Fentian was very satisfied with this descendant of his. He smiled. Junhong, I've called you here because I have something for you to do. Ancestor, please tell me. The ancestor had something for him? What was it? Lin Junhong was very curious. Ever since the ancestor went into seclusion 10,000 years ago, he rarely summoned him and others. If there was something, he would only send a message. He would not summon him personally like now. Do you know Longao? If it was before, Lin Junhong would definitely not know him. After all, the difference in status between Lin Junhong and Longao was too big. One was the master of Wanzhan school, one of the 10 great sections. The other was the master of the newly established dragon sect. The two of them were not on the same level. But now, Longao had caused havoc in the Martial Artists Alliance twice and was famous all over the world. Not to mention him, he believed that everyone already knew this man who had just risen up. He nodded. Lin Junhong did not know why the ancestor suddenly mentioned Longao because there was no grudge between the Wanzhan school and Longao. Even if there was a misunderstanding between Longao and the Wanzhan school, it would not affect the Wanzhan school. From now on, you have to help Longao. Huh! Hearing the ancestor's words, Lin Junhong was a little dumbfounded. He did not know what was wrong with the ancestor. Why did he want to help Longao out of nowhere? If it was someone else, it would be fine to help, but Longao's situation was obviously different. The grudge between Longao and the Martial Artists Alliance was known to the world. If he helped Longao, wouldn't he be going against the Martial Artists Alliance? Was it worth it for a Longao? Ancestor, with the grudge between Longao and the Martial Artists Alliance, I'm afraid the Martial Artists Alliance won't agree if we help Longao. Since Tong Zun is here, we don't have to provoke him. Tong Zun, the super expert who founded the Martial Artists Alliance. Tong Zun, you old bastard! You don't even care about the promise you made back then. I will personally go and see this old friend of yours. The more the ancestor acted like this, the more surprised Lin Junhong was. The ancestor was willing to offend the Martial Artists Alliance for the sake of a Longao. He was even willing to go there in person. Was this true? Why would the old ancestor help Longao? Could it be that the two of them were related? Lin Junhong had full confidence in the strength of the old ancestor. In today's world, other than the marvelous mathematician and Tian Dao, the old ancestor could be said to be the strongest below the peak of martial arts. He was a super-existence on the same level as Tong Zun. Ancestor. He waved his hand. Even if Lin Junhong didn't say it, Fentian knew what he wanted to say. he smiled and said. Do as I say. I know what to do. How could Lin Junhong not agree now that things had come to this point? Lin Junhong knew very well that although he was the master of Wanzhan's school, the real number one person in Wanzhan's school was not him. It was the old ancestor in front of him, the legendary figure of Wanzhan's school, Fentian. Ancestor, do you have any other orders? Find out who kidnapped Longao's family. Yes, I'll do it right away. Even if he was unwilling in his heart, Lin Junhong wouldn't say anything since the old ancestor had already given the order. He turned around and left. In a short while, he had disappeared without a trace. Longao, I hope you won't let me down. Whether I can find the origin energy and break through the peak of martial arts will all depend on you. The entire mountain peak was very secluded. As the forbidden area of Wanzhan School, no one except Lin Junhong could come here. 9 provinces continent. Longao Peak. After searching for an entire day and night, Longao and the others still couldn't find any clues because the person who destroyed the array was very powerful. He was even a divine array master. There seemed to be only one place that could trigger a divine array master, and that was the Wanzhan School. However, Longao didn't believe that this was done by Wanzhan School. The reason was simple. He didn't have any grudges with Wanzhan School. Even if there were conflicts with the branch, he believed that Wanzhan School wouldn't touch his family because of this. Moreover, with the Martial Artists Alliance as an example, unless Wanzhan School wanted to find trouble for themselves. Since it wasn't Wanzhan School, the biggest possibility was that it was the Long family and the Martial Artists Alliance. Was it the Long family? Or the Martial Artists Alliance? In the end, Longao still targeted the Martial Artists Alliance because the Martial Artists Alliance was the most likely culprit in the entire Tianwu continent. Previously, when he gave the order to destroy them, Longao was extremely angry with the Martial Artists Alliance. Brother Long, you must calm down. Don't be impulsive. The foundation and strength of the Martial Artists Alliance isn't something that you can shake by yourself. Why don't you join forces with the other 10 forces to deal with the Martial Artists Alliance together? That way, we'll have a better chance. His family was in danger. If he joined forces with the other 10 forces, who knew how long it would take? Moreover, Longao knew very well that with his status, even if he wanted to, the other 10 forces might not agree. Because as long as they weren't stupid, he believed that no one would offend the Martial Artists Alliance for him. Putting himself in their shoes, if he was in their shoes and they sent someone to ask him to join forces with them to deal with the 10 forces, would he agree? Regardless of whether the others agreed or not, he definitely wouldn't agree. There was no doubt about it. He was a little serious. As Bai Ling said, the Martial Artists Alliance's strength and foundation were too strong. He couldn't shake the entire Martial Artists Alliance with his strength alone. Especially with Tong Zun's arrival, the Martial Artists Alliance wouldn't even care about the other 10 forces, let alone him. He had seen Tong Zun's strength with his own eyes. He was much stronger than Tong Tiandi. The two of them weren't on the same level. What should he do? Seeing that Longao didn't say anything, Bai Ling became more and more worried. Longao, are you looking for me? Hearing the voice in front of him, Longao's heart skipped a beat. He immediately cut off the connection with Bai Ling and sent a message to Long Fu. No matter what happened, he couldn't let Bai Ling and Xiling come out. Looking at the 9 people who suddenly appeared in front of him, Longao's face was very ugly. Enemies often cross paths. He originally wanted to find the Martial Artists Alliance, but he didn't expect the Martial Artists Alliance to come to him first. It seemed that the Martial Artists Alliance had locked onto him and would definitely come back to Longao's mountain. Because of this, Longao was even more certain that the disappearance of his family had something to do with the Martial Artists Alliance. P.S. Let's start with 5 chapters. Today will be a big explosion. There will be more later. Chapter 1308. Tong Zun, where's my family? Things had already reached this point. Longao had already disregarded life and death. Longao, you don't even know if you're dead or alive. Why do you care about your family? The more Tong Zun said, the more certain Longao was that the martial artists' alliance was behind the disappearance of his family. Longao was filled with anger at the thought of this. Endure. Calm down. He couldn't be impulsive at a time like this. Otherwise, he would only bring harm to his family. His parents, grandpa, Yuyin, brother, siblings, friends, disciples of his family, disciples of the dragon sect, all of them would die for him. Longao didn't want anyone to die. He didn't want anything to happen to his family. Tong Zun, the grudge between me and the martial artists' alliance is between you and me. It has nothing to do with my family. Before Tong Zun could speak, Longao continued. Don't bring harm to my family. Ha ha ha! Hearing Longao's words, Tong Tiandi and the others laughed crazily. Especially Shang Guanyi, who laughed the craziest. Shang Guanyi was very clear that even if Longao had 3 heads and 6 arms, he believed that Longao would definitely die this time. It could be considered as getting rid of any future trouble for him. Longao, you're right. Tong Zun smiled and continued. Don't bring harm to my family. When you made a scene in the Martial Artists Alliance and killed our deputy leader and disciple, I want to ask you why you didn't say the same thing back then. Hearing this, Longao wanted to go up and kill all 9 of them. Endure. Endure. Calm down. Calm down. Tong Zun, what do you want? Give me the space artifact, break your arms, and destroy your cultivation. Then I'll consider sparing your life. Don't even think about it. Longao did not hesitate in the slightest and directly refused. Longao knew what kind of people Tong Zun and the others were. Even if he broke his arms and destroyed his cultivation, he believed that the Martial Artists Alliance would not let him go. Longao would never do such a stupid thing. If he agreed, then not only would he not be able to save his family, he would also die. You don't agree? Tong Zun, cut the crap. I can't agree to this. Good, good, good. Tong Zun took 3 steps back and waved his hand. His meaning was clear. Ancestor, let me do it. Tong Zun didn't say anything, but it was clear that he agreed. Shang Guanyi was overjoyed. It would be great if she could kill Longao with her own hands. Shang Guanyi took 10 steps forward and was about to say something. Kill! She was shocked. Without any hesitation, Shang Guanyi took a big stride forward and dashed out. Even before he arrived, his horrifying aura of heaven and earth had already pressed down. Chi of heaven and earth? Longao snorted and released the chi of heaven and earth as well. The 2 chi of heaven and earth collided with each other and sparks flew. Longao, I'm going to tear you into pieces today. Longao didn't say anything. He knew that he was no match for Shang Guanyi with his own strength. If he chose to fight head-on, he would die. Longao knew his own strength very well. With the help of space teleportation, Longao's body kept changing. Even Shang Guanyi couldn't catch up with Longao. Not far away. Tong Zun was surprised to see Longao's body disappear and reappear. He didn't know how Longao did it. Could it be that Longao's space teleportation device was so powerful? Heaven Emperor. Ancestor, what are your orders? All of you guard all positions for me. This time, you must not let Longao escape. Yes. Of course, Tong Tiandi would not let Longao go. No matter how much he appreciated Longao before, now that things had come to this point, he had to kill Longao. As the leader of the Martial Artists Alliance, he had to consider the interests of the alliance before doing anything. Therefore, Longao had to die. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to answer to the alliance. Tong Tiandi and the others sealed off all directions. It was like an inescapable net. It wouldn't be easy for Longao to escape. Tong Zun was looking forward to it. He couldn't wait to kill Longao and get the space teleportation device. I'll leave this place to you. I'll be back soon. The ancestor was leaving? Tong Tiandi and the others were dumbfounded when they saw the ancestor's figure disappear. No one could guarantee that they could kill Longao under such circumstances. If it was someone else, even one Nirvana Realm martial artist could easily kill him, let alone so many Nirvana realm martial artists. Longao Peak. In the 9 heavens, at the peak of the clouds. Tong Zun's face turned ugly when he saw the old man in front of him. He smiled and said, "Fentian, we haven't seen each other for 10,000 years. How's it going?" "Very well." Fentian smiled and continued, "Tong Zun, there's something I'd like to ask for your help with. I'm fine with anything except for Longao's matter. Forgive me for not being able to help." Tong Zun wasn't a fool. He knew that Fentian's sudden arrival was definitely because of Longao. Otherwise, Fentian wouldn't have come here out of nowhere. It was also because of this that Tong Zun was surprised. Fentian's identity was obvious. He wouldn't believe that Fentian would travel thousands of miles to the 9 provinces continent just for Longao if he didn't see it with his own eyes. "Ha ha ha, Tong Zun, you and I are old friends. There's no need for this. Longao has done me a favor, so I hope that you can let Longao go for my sake. I owe you a favor. What do you think?" Fentian's favor, no matter who it was, would be more than willing to give it to him. As the old ancestor of Wanzhan's school, Fentian's strength and identity were obvious. If it was any other matter, Tong Zun would be more than willing to do this favor. However, Longao was the only exception. It wasn't easy to trap Longao this time. Tong Zun was 100% unwilling to give up just like that. "Fentian, forgive me for being powerless. Longao is mine today. No matter who comes, don't even think about taking him away." Fentian's face started to turn ugly. With his identity, he had already said it out loud, but Tong Zun didn't give him any face. How could he save his face? "Fentian, it's not worth it for Wanzhan's school to fall out with the Martial Artists Alliance just for Longao. Tong Zun, since you don't give me any face, then don't blame me for not giving you any face. At most, we'll go to war. I, Fentian, have never been afraid of anyone. However, let me give you a piece of advice. The Martial Artists Alliance alone might not be a match for my Wanzhan school." Fentian was definitely not trying to scare him. After all, Wanzhan's school could fight against 10,000 people alone. A powerful array master was in existence that wouldn't die in 100 battles. Chapter 1309. It would be a lie if he said that he was not afraid of Wanzhan's school. Fentian's strength was needless to say, but how many people in the Martial Artists Alliance could go against him if he set up a super formation? However, Tong Zun was not willing to give up just like that. "Tong Zun, I have an idea, but I'm not sure if you're willing to accept it. Tell me." Tong Zun was not willing to provoke Fentian unless he had no other choice, let alone fall out with him. Spiritual sense voice transmission. Tong Zun's expression changed again after a minute. "Fentian, are you telling the truth?" "Absolutely, but this must be kept a secret. As long as you're willing to help me, I can swear that we'll reach the pinnacle of martial Tao together." The pinnacle of martial Tao was the realm that he wanted to reach even in his dreams. He cursed in his heart. Why did Fentian want to take advantage of him? Tong Zun did not know why, but he felt that something was wrong. However, if Fentian could swear a blood oath, would he not agree to it? Tong Zun knew very well that Fentian would do anything in order to break through to the peak stage of the martial Tao. Not to mention falling out with the Martial Arts Alliance, it was not impossible for him to fight to the death. "I can promise you, but Longao might not." "What do you mean?" "I believe that you already know about the grudge between us and Longao. Even if I'm willing to let him go, I believe that he won't let me go. When the time comes, Longao will not let go of the Martial Artists Alliance." "Tong Zun, let me ask you something. Did you do something to Longao's family?" "No." Fentian chose to believe him because Tong Zun did not need to lie to him. If it was not the Martial Artists Alliance, then who was going against Longao? Getting someone else to do the dirty work. Both Tong Zun and Fentian thought of a possibility at the same time. Someone wanted to frame the Martial Artists Alliance and instigate a battle between Longao and the Martial Artists Alliance. Who could it be? Longao Peak. Longao was forced to retreat by Shangguaniye. He could be killed at any time. Due to the interference of spatial fluctuations, it was impossible to enter the Dragon Seal space, let alone use spatial teleportation. What should he do? Although spatial teleportation was powerful, it had a fatal weakness. Whenever someone interfered with the spatial fluctuations, spatial teleportation would lose its effectiveness. One leaf, that's enough. At this critical moment, Tong Zun's voice suddenly sounded. Before Shangguaniye could figure out what was going on, her body was forcefully pulled back. Forefather. He waved his hand. Longao, you've lost this battle, but you can leave. Huh? Upon hearing the forefather's words, everyone, including Shangguaniye, was dumbfounded. Longao was already a dead man. If that was the case, why would the forefather let Longao go for no reason? However, Longao was too unpredictable. If he was given enough time and opportunity to grow, Longao would become a huge threat to the Martial Artists Alliance. It was impossible for the forefather to not know about this. Tong Zun, my family? Although he was a little curious as to why Tong Zun would let him go, Longao would definitely not leave. His family's fate was unknown, and no one knew what the Martial Artists Alliance was up to. Longao, even if I capture your family, I'll directly destroy them. I won't use you as a hostage, because you're not worthy. Before Longao could finish his words, Tong Zun continued. I'll settle the score with you in the future, but today, I won't kill you. However, you have to remember one thing. Don't be too arrogant. The Martial Artists Alliance is not a place where you can come and go as you please. You won't be so lucky next time. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, Tong Zun's figure disappeared without a trace. What happened to the forefather? Tong Tiandi felt a little helpless. However, he knew that the forefather's departure must have something to do with Longao. Since the forefather did not want to say more, they did not ask. Tong Tiandi and the others were smart. They knew what to ask, what not to ask, and when to ask. They had to know clearly, otherwise their lives would be in danger. Let's go. Longao, if it wasn't for the forefather, you would already be dead. However, don't think that you'll be fine. One day, I'll make sure that you die without a burial place. Shangguaniye was very depressed. Who knew what was going on with the forefather? It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and he missed it just like that. Even he would not believe that he was not unhappy. However, no matter if it was Shangguaniye or Tong Tiandi, they would definitely not dare to go against the forefather's wishes. Carrying 1,000 unwillingness and unhappiness in their hearts, they all left in a short while. Longao was the only one left on Longao's peak. If it wasn't the Martial Artists Alliance, then who could it be? Longao did not doubt Tong Zun's words at all. He knew that with Tong Zun's status, he would definitely not lie about this kind of thing. Therefore, Longao was very curious about who wanted to deal with him. Longao thought about it for a long time, but he could not figure out who wanted to deal with him and his family. In the Tianwu continent, to be able to deal with his entire family in such a short period of time without leaving any traces, it was clear that the other party was very powerful. Other than this, it did not make sense for Tong Zun to let him go when he could not hold on any longer. Although Longao had been fighting with Shangguaniye, he was very observant and alert. Of course, he knew that Tong Zun had left clearly. Could it be that someone was helping him? Other than this, Longao could not figure out why Tong Zun would choose to let him go. After all, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. As long as he was careful in the future, it would be very difficult for the Martial Artists Alliance to besiege him. Longao felt that his mind was in a mess. One thing after another, it was as if he had fallen into a trap. Strictly speaking, he had entered a chess game. He was just a chess piece among many chess pieces. As for how he should move, it was not up to him to decide. Although this idea was absurd, Longao had this kind of intuition in his heart. Who was behind all this? Could it be the divine mathematician? In the Tianwu continent, there were two warriors who had reached the peak of martial arts. It was almost impossible for the Heavenly Tao to do this. If the Heavenly Tao knew about this, it would definitely not let him go. Then, other than the Heavenly Tao, it could only be the marvelous mathematician. Was it possible for the marvelous mathematician? It was a mess. It was really a mess. Longao sat on the ground and took deep breaths. Author's note: it's almost 3 o'clock. Xiaojiu will go to bed first. Good night, everyone. If you have a vote, please vote for Longao. Chapter 13:10. After staying at Longao Peak for 3 days, Longao stood up and left. His mind was in a mess. His intuition told him that the disappearance of his family for no reason was definitely not that simple. His family's safety. Thinking of his family, Longao was a bit worried. He did not continue to stay in the 9 provinces continent. That was because Longao knew that the people who had captured his family were definitely from the Martial Sky continent. As soon as he stepped into the Martial Sky continent, he was a bit surprised. Longao did not know why Muronguena was looking for him at this time. Longao had a good impression of Muronguena. Adding on the Murongyener, Longao did not decline. He immediately changed directions and headed to the Sword Sect. Sword Sect. Within the main hall, the Sword Sect master, the one known as the Emperor Oken, Muronguena, and the Sword Sect's Grand Elder, Yixian, looked at Longao with joy. They asked in unison, "Longao, are you all right?" Shaking his head, Longao smiled and replied, "I'm fine. Thank you for your concern." Why were the two of them so concerned about him? Ever since he had entered the Martial Sky continent, Longao had learned a principle. No matter where he went, he could not easily trust others. Otherwise, he would die a miserable death. "As long as you're fine. Master, may I know why you've called me here?" Longao was very worried about his family's safety. So if there was nothing too important, he would leave the Sword Sect. As if he knew that Longao was very worried, Muronguena nodded and said, "Longao, I've called you here mainly because of your family." Longao, who had just sat down, immediately stood up when he heard Muronguena mention his family. He was impatient. "Master, do you know the whereabouts of my family?" Nodding. Muronguena had a hesitant expression, as if he had some misgivings. Longao was very gloomy. "Master, if you know the whereabouts of my family, please tell me. Count it as me, Longao, owing you a favor." "Grand Elder, what do you think?" Muronguena was very good at pretending. This time, he had called Longao for this matter. But at this moment, Muronguena was clearly a good person. To let Longao know that he was taking a risk. Shameless. He knew that Murongfengnian was shameless, but Longao was still grateful. Their cooperation was flawless. Muronguena and Yixian's intentions were very clear. They wanted to express their goodwill. After all, Longao was no longer the same as before. He had caused trouble at the Martial Artists Alliance, and killed 2 deputy leaders. More importantly, Longao could escape from under Tong Zun's nose. What did this mean? There were only 4 words to describe Longao's current state. He had a bright future. If it were the Longao, Muronguena, and Yixian of the past, would they still be like this? It was really an unknown. Under such circumstances, Longao could no longer care about anything else. He had to save his family first. "Thank you. Longao, you entered a Long family and fell out with the Long family." Long family? Could this be the doing of the Long family? Longao was not a fool. Of course, he could understand the meaning behind Muronguena's words. All 10 sides had the power to do this. Longao also thought about the Long family, but he was unwilling to believe it in the end. Because he knew very well that once the Long family did this, there would be no room for negotiation. From then on, he and the Long family would be in a situation where either one of them died or the other died. Long family would not do this unless they had no other choice. "Longao, I believe you've already guessed that the family and the Dragon sect are against you this time. It's the Long family." As if afraid that Longao would not believe it, before Longao asked, Muronguena had already said again. After you left the dragon sect and went to the Long family had already mobilized a mysterious force. Although I don't know who leaked the location of the dragon sect in your family, I can say for sure that there must be a traitor in your family. Longao nodded. How could Longao not understand Muronguena's meaning? A traitor. From start to finish, Longao had never dared to imagine that a traitor would appear in his family or sect. Because of that, he had been very careful in selecting disciples. In the end, he had been unable to avoid such a situation. Longao did not blame the traitor. Instead, he blamed himself. The power of a sect or a family might be enough to dominate the 9 provinces continent, but to the Martial Heaven continent, it was just a drop in the ocean. Even if it was placed in the ocean, it probably wouldn't even cause the slightest ripple. Long family was a colossus to his own family. Longao was very clear that if the core seal hadn't disappeared, the Long family wouldn't have dared to do such a thing. As for why the core seal had disappeared, it was still a mystery. Long family. Long Di Tian probably didn't know that he had already made an agreement with the dragon race. No matter how much he fought with the Long family, the dragon race could not interfere. Without the dragon race's help, the Long family didn't seem so scary. Family was Longao's bottom line. No matter who it was, as long as they touched that bottom line, Longao would not easily let them off. Longao, although the Long family has captured your family, according to my guess, Long Di Tian won't make a move immediately. At the very least, he will wait for you to go personally. Therefore, you need to plan carefully. Otherwise, if you rashly go to the Long family, not only will you not be able to save your family, you might even lose your life. Master, I know what you mean. I won't be impulsive. Since the Long family wants to play with me, then I'll accompany you. Thank you, Master. I will remember this kindness. This was the effect that Muronguena wanted. Under his pressure, the current Longao's value was much higher. There was no need to talk about the potential of a person who could cause trouble in the Martial Artists Alliance and ignore Tong Zun. Even if Longao couldn't join the Sword Sect, at the very least, he could establish a good relationship with him. Who knows, he might be useful in the future. One had to admit that Muronguena was indeed a person who planned far ahead. He was much better than Tong Tiandi, Long Di Tian, and the others. Longao, since you already know, then stay in the Sword Sect for a period of time. I'll discuss with you how to save your family. Before Longao could say anything, Yixian said, Longao, it's almost impossible for you to shake the entire Long family with your strength alone. Therefore, we need to plan carefully. Master has already agreed to help you with all his strength, even if he has to go to war with the Long family. Longao was very surprised. He couldn't understand why Muronguena would suddenly treat him so well. P.S. I was already asleep, but Xiaojio was afraid that I wouldn't be able to write tomorrow morning, so I got up and continued to write the next chapter. The 8th chapter has been delivered. Chapter 13:11. If it were any other time, Longao would definitely refuse. Because Longao had always believed that there was no such thing as a free lunch in the world, and there was no such thing as a pie falling from the sky. But now, as Yixian had just said, with his strength, it was impossible for him to shake the entire Long family. If he attacked the Long family single-handedly, not only would he not be able to save his family, he might even lose his life. There was no benefit. Longao left the main hall. Master, I hope we're right this time. He nodded. Muronguena understood what the Great Elder meant. This time, for Longao, they had completely offended the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family. If it were in the past, it would have been impossible. Bet. The two of them were betting on Longao's unlimited potential. Master, how should we help Longao? Let me think about it. After leaving the main hall, Longao kept thinking about his family and the Long family. He had suspected that there would be a tripod of 10 forces. In the end, he locked on to the martial artists' alliance. However, he did not expect that the real enemy would be the Long family. Without strength, this was how it was. He knew that his family was in trouble, but he could not help them. At this moment, Longao was blaming himself. Hey, isn't this the great hero Longao? Why are you in our sword sect? The law-enforcing elder Lu Changxing had always been at odds with Longao. He knew clearly that Longao had made trouble for the martial artists' alliance twice. From the beginning to the end. Lu Changxing did not believe that Longao had such strong strength until the martial artists' alliance announced it to the world. It turned out that the reason why Longao was so strong was that he had used some kind of secret skill. In the end, Longao was still trash. From Lu Changxing's point of view, when he saw Longao at the sword sect, if he was not mistaken, Longao was probably afraid that the martial artists' alliance would cause trouble for him, so he sought protection from the sword sect. Lu Changxing had no idea that Longao had entered the sword sect because he had been invited by the master, Emperor Oken, Murongguena. If he knew, would Lu Changxing still dare to do this? He was a snob. Scram! Longao was so frustrated that he couldn't even be bothered to say a word to Lu Changxing. If it were in the past, Longao might have been afraid of Lu Changxing. But now, Lu Changxing wouldn't be able to last more than 10 moves in front of him. Lu Changxing was an enlightened martial artist. With Longao's strength, it was impossible for him to defeat him. The gap between mortal gods and enlightened martial artists was huge. Among the 5 realms of the divine path, enlightened martial artists were already at the peak of the divine path. Because of this, although Lu Changxing was a little surprised, he was still full of confidence. He was just a mortal god. You dare to tell me to scram? Lu Changxing was instantly enraged because he never thought that Longao would dare to be so presumptuous in his territory. After all, Longao was a prisoner. How could a prisoner be so insolent? Lu Changxing, before I explode, you'd better get the hell away from me. Otherwise, you're courting death. Without giving Longao any chance to finish, Lu Changxing's body had already darted out. This time, Lu Changxing clearly had murderous intent. As the sword sect's law enforcement elder, Lu Changxing was usually high and mighty. When had he ever been insulted like this? In the distance. Master, should we go out and stop him? Waving his hand, Murongguena watched the battle in front of him with great interest. Lu Changxing has been a little spoiled these years. It's not a bad thing to let Longao rub off on his spirit. Longao could defeat Lu Changxing? Yu Xian was a little skeptical, but when he thought of Longao's previous crazy behavior, he couldn't help but choose to believe. Master, what if Longao accidentally kills Changxing? What should we do? Lu Changxing was after all a heavenly god expert, and the law enforcement elder of the sword sect. If he was killed by Longao, it wouldn't be a good thing for the sword sect. Murongguena smiled. Don't worry. Although Longao is a little reckless, he's not a fool. Now that the Long family has been captured by the Long family, Longao wants to borrow the power of the sect to deal with the Long family. At this time, Longao will definitely not act rashly. Hearing the master's words, Yu Xian also let out a long sigh of relief. Longao looked coldly at Lu Changxing, without the slightest fear. When Lu Changxing arrived in front of him, Longao, who had been motionless all this time, suddenly disappeared. He was completely shocked. This again. Practically everyone on the martial heaven continent knew that Longao possessed a spatial divine item that could instantly disappear. There were also many people who believed that the reason Longao was so arrogant and crazy was because of this spatial divine item. Longao, if you have the ability, fight me fair and square. You dash. Before Lu Changxing could finish speaking, a ray of sword chi shot toward him from behind. Lu Changxing hadn't expected that Longao would dare to counterattack in such a situation. In his carelessness, Lu Changxing dodged. But because of that, he was forced to crawl away. His expression was extremely gloomy. As a grand heavenly god, he had been forced into such a miserable state by Longao. Some of the spectating disciples of the sword sect began to laugh. Humph, I'll let you experience my roaming dragon sword. Practically everyone in the sword sect cultivated the sword Dao. Lu Changxing was no exception. With the roaming dragon sword in hand, Lu Changxing's entire aura changed. Lu Changxing's strongest attack was the roaming dragon sword art. His sword chi was like a divine dragon that swam through space. Longao was also a bit surprised. He was truly worthy of being a law enforcement elder of the sword sect. Although his strength was only average amongst heavenly gods, once he wielded the roaming dragon sword, his power instantly increased by a third. Longao didn't use the god-punishing sword. He had already decided to follow the mysterious youth's method. Using his finger as a sword, he circulated the god-punishing sword art. God-punishing sword chi shot out of his finger. Sword chi collided with each other. The fake mountains, trees, and even pillars were covered in sword chi. In just a few seconds, the surroundings were reduced to ruins. And that was with the two of them controlling their sword chi as much as possible. Otherwise, their power would have been enough to destroy everything within 100 meters. On the path of the sword Dao, Longao's attainments were already very high. If it weren't for the huge gap between their realms, Lu Changxing would have already been killed at this moment. Although he couldn't kill Lu Changxing, Longao didn't intend to let Lu Changxing go. If he didn't teach him a lesson, he didn't know how many eyes Ma Wangye would open. Just as Murongena had said, Longao definitely wouldn't kill Lu Changxing in this situation. However, he would definitely teach him a lesson. Go! Longao directly summoned his reincarnation doppelganger. However, the reincarnation doppelganger was too fast. After it passed by like a shadow, Lu Changxing was already sent flying. Like a kite with a broken string, he fell heavily to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. Lu Changxing's face was filled with horror. P.S. Copy of Chapter 9. Chapter 13:12. I've lost? Lu Changxing couldn't care less about the throbbing pain in his body. Even now, he still couldn't accept the truth. As the dignified law enforcement elder of the sword sect and a divine realm martial artist, he was defeated by a mere Longao. Is this true? Not only that. Lu Changxing didn't see the move Longao used from beginning to end. How did Longao do it? In the distance. Master, Longao's move just now. Nodding, Murongena was also a little surprised. He smiled and said, Longao is not simple. After saying this, Murongena didn't continue to watch the battle. He turned and left. Yi Xian also didn't stay and disappeared with Murongena. Lu Changxing, for the sake of the master, I'll spare your life today. He turned and prepared to leave. But at this time, Longao's voice sounded again. If you dare to provoke me again, I'll kill you! Looking at the gradually disappearing figure, Lu Changxing's face was as gloomy as it could be, and as ugly as it could be. Clenching his fists tightly, Lu Changxing couldn't take this lying down. Longao, just you wait. I'll let you know what it means to live a life worse than death. Lu Changxing got up from the ground with difficulty, and looked around coldly. Then, he limped away. Longao didn't leave the sword sect. Instead, he stayed. It was still the same sentence. With his strength alone, it was impossible to shake the entire Long family. It would be best if he could borrow the strength of the sword sect. Longao first went to find Murongyener. No matter what, the two of them were friends. Long family. In the main hall. The sound of footsteps rang out, and not long after, Long Hang hurriedly entered the hall. After bowing, Longao said impatiently, Patriarch, I just received news that Longao has entered the sword sect. If I'm not mistaken, Murongena must have told Longao the news. Long Ditian was not surprised at all, and his face remained calm. Since we're doing this, Longao will definitely find out. Sword sect. What a sword sect! The only thing that Long Ditian did not expect was that the sword sect would interfere. In the beginning, Long Ditian was full of confidence. For the sake of a Longao, He believed that no one would choose to go against the Long family, unless they were tired of living. But what was the result? For the Sword sect to interfere in this matter, it would be a lie to say that they weren't angry. Master, what should we do now? Don't be impatient. The Sword sect will only interfere. I don't believe that they will help Longao go against the Long family. Long Ditian was still very confident in this point. The Sword sect and the Long family's strength were about the same, and the Sword sect definitely knew this. If they were to force a war, it would not benefit either the Long family or the Sword sect. For a Longao, was it worth it? No matter who it was, no one would dare to do this. In Long Ditian's opinion, the Sword sect's interference was at most a leak. Long Heng had already thought of this point, but he didn't know why. But he felt that something was wrong, as if things weren't as simple as they seemed. From the beginning to the end, Long Heng didn't agree to do this. If they succeeded in killing Longao, then dealing with the Long family behind him would be a simple matter. But they had to deal with the family behind Longao first. If they couldn't kill Longao, and Longao went against the Long family like a man, how would they deal with that? However, since Long Ditian insisted on doing this, as the great elder of the family, he had no other choice. Long Heng was very clear on one thing. Since things had already reached this stage, then no matter what, they had to kill Longao and eliminate all future troubles. Master, the Dragon Clan this time. Before Long Heng could finish speaking, Long Ditian's face had already darkened, and his body emitted a strong killing intent. He snorted heavily. The Nine Heavens Divine Dragon said that he had an agreement with Longao that he wouldn't interfere in our grudges. Trash, all trash. Long Heng was at a loss. In his eyes, Long Ditian had always been very gentle, but recently, Long Ditian had been very angry, as if he had changed into a different person, especially when it came to the Dragon Clan. Master, what should we do now? It's fine. Even if the Dragon Clan doesn't help us, there's still Longao's family. I don't believe that Longao won't obediently submit. He lowered his head and pondered. Long Ditian didn't speak, and Long Heng didn't continue speaking. Time passed bit by bit. In the blink of an eye, the day had passed, and dusk was approaching. Great Elder, spread the news. If Longao wants to save his family, he has to come alone, and he can't find any helpers. Otherwise, I will kill one person every other day. Understood, Patriarch. Wait. Long Ditian thought for a moment, then continued. Tell Longao that I will give him at most 10 days. After 10 days, if I don't see him, I will also kill one person every other day. Hearing Long Ditian's plan, Long Heng laughed. If that was the case, then as long as Longao cared about his family, he would definitely come. Unless Longao had already cut off his emotions and desires, and didn't care about his family's life or death. Could Longao do that? After Long Heng left, only Long Ditian was left in the hall. Ditian, if necessary, you can kill Longao's family. Anyway, you just have to kill Longao. Tong Zun's figure suddenly appeared. This matter was orchestrated by Tong Zun. Otherwise, with just Long Ditian and the other's strength, it was impossible to do it without anyone noticing. Moreover, it was so fast. Tong Zun had already promised Fentian that he wouldn't deal with Longao for the time being. However, from the beginning to the end, Tong Zun was perfunctory because he didn't know if the origin energy that Fentian mentioned was real or fake. What if it was fake? Although Fentian had made a blood oath, Fentian could delay for tens of thousands of years. In the end, he could only wait. Could it be that he had to wait forever? If that was really the case, wouldn't his efforts be in vain? It was because of this that Tong Zun didn't choose to believe Fentian. However, he didn't fall out with Fentian either. After all, Wanzhan's school's strength was there for all to see. He didn't have full confidence that once Wanzhan's school and the Martial Artists Alliance started a war, he wouldn't be able to win. It was better to be safe than sorry. If the Martial Artists Alliance lost, how would he explain it to the Martial Artists Alliance? Moreover, He was the one who established the Martial Artists Alliance, so he had a lot of feelings for it. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Tong Zun wouldn't let the Martial Artists Alliance suffer any losses. Chapter 13:13. Senior, I'm afraid that Longao will act like a man and attack the Long family again. Long Ditian was still very angry. Tong Zun was still alive, and the Martial Artists Alliance's status had risen. Even the Long family wouldn't dare to go against the Martial Artists Alliance. Tong Zun was a super expert from the same era as the old ancestor. Long Ditian also had his own plans. With Tong Zun's help, it would be very easy to deal with Longao. At the very least, without Tong Zun's help, they wouldn't be able to take away Longao's family without anyone knowing. Using each other. As long as we have hostages, Longao wouldn't dare to do anything. Tong Zun was very confident about this. Senior, I'm worried that we won't be able to kill Longao with just our strength. Long Ditian was still worried. After all, there was a precedent. If Longao really went crazy and attacked the Long family, even if they could kill Longao in the end, the family wouldn't be able to bear such a loss. 2 Nirvana Realm martial artists. Just the thought of it was terrifying. Ditian, you don't have to worry about this. As long as you can lure Longao into the Long family, I don't believe that Longao can leave alive if we work together. The Long family had a total of 11 Nirvana Realm martial artists. Including Tong Zun, the Martial Artists Alliance had 9 Nirvana Realm martial artists. With the two added together, there were a total of 20 Nirvana Realm martial artists. What kind of concept was this? If Longao could successfully escape from the joint attack of 20 Nirvana Realm martial artists, then no matter if it was the Long family or the Martial Artists Alliance, they could all go to hell. 20 Nirvana Realm martial artists, including the old ancestor of the Martial Artists Alliance, Tong Zun, was terrifying. This was what Long Ditian wanted. He didn't want to be used. If Longao went crazy and attacked the Long family, it would be the Long family that would suffer, not the Martial Artists Alliance. In this way, it would be safer to deal with Longao. Moreover, he could drag the Martial Artists Alliance down with him. Senior, within 10 days, Longao will definitely come. I'm worried that the Heaven and Earth sect, 5 Elements sect, and Swords sect will help him. The Heaven and Earth sect, 5 Elements sect, and Swords sect were one of the top sections. If the 3 sects were to help Longao, things would become a lot more troublesome. Tong Zun thought for a moment and said, I'll take care of those 3. After he finished speaking, his Zun disappeared. As soon as Tong Zun left, Longbo appeared. Longbo cursed at the old fox and seemed to be in a bad mood. He said, Father, Tong Zun is obviously trying to kill Longao with a borrowed knife. Actually, we don't have to interfere. When the Martial Artists Alliance and Longao are in a life-and-death battle, we can continue to interfere and reap the benefits. How could Long Ditian not know what his son was thinking? If it was possible, he would want to do it. But was it possible? Tong Zun came to us this time because our old ancestor is dead. Otherwise, Tong Zun wouldn't dare to do this. Thinking of this, Long Ditian sighed deeply. Father, what should we do if Tong Zun plays tricks with us? Humph, he wants to play tricks with me. Tong Zun said confidently. Long family spread the news that if Longao didn't reach the Long family in 10 days, they would kill all of Longao's family members. They would kill one every other day. Longao, who was in the Sword sect, didn't act rashly when he heard the news from the Long family. Instead, he calmed down. This was because Longao didn't expect the Long family to do this. Long family had already told everyone that they were the ones who did it. There would definitely be people criticizing them. After all, it wasn't his family members who were implicated. Calm down. He had to calm down. Longao knew that he had to be calm at this time. Otherwise, he would fall into the Long family's trap. Not only would he not be able to save his family, he might even lose his life. 10 days. He sneered. Long family did this to trick him into joining the Long family. As soon as the Long family spread the news, Muronguena summoned Longao. Only Muronguena and Yi Xian were in the main hall. Longao, I believe you have received the news. However, I have to tell you that the Sword Sect and other forces will not help you. Eh? Hearing Muronguena's words, Longao was curious. A few days ago, Muronguena had promised him that no matter what happened, the Sword Sect would help him. However, Longao wasn't angry because he knew that the Sword Sect wouldn't do this for no reason. Could there be something fishy? As expected. Longao, it's not that we don't want to help you. However, yesterday, Tong Zun of the Martial Artists Alliance came looking for us. No matter who it is, as long as they help you, Tong Zun will help. I believe you know Tong Zun's strength. If the ancestor of the Sword Sect, Jian Tian, was still alive. Muronguena didn't finish his words, but the meaning was clear. There was no need to talk about Tong Zun's strength. Longao was almost certain that in the martial heaven continent, unless the heavenly Daos or the god diviner personally took action, there were only a few people who could defeat Tong Zun. Longao didn't blame anyone because he knew that the Sword Sect, the Five Elements Sect, and the Heaven and Earth Sect wouldn't defend the Martial Artists Alliance for him, especially Tong Zun of the Martial Artists Alliance. If Tong Zun went crazy, who in the Sword Sect would be able to stop him? Master, I understand, but I still have to thank you. Longao couldn't do anything about the Sword Sect's helplessness. He could also understand. It was better to rely on oneself than to rely on others. In the end, relying on others was useless. Under the situation of 1 against 4, he would still lose without a doubt. As for the mysterious powerhouse of the Massacre Abyss, Longao still did not know who it was. At this time, he could no longer care about anything else. Inside the Massacre Abyss, there were a total of 5 Abyss Masters in the Massacre Abyss. They were the East Master of the Abyss, Hong Lingtong, the South Master of the Abyss, Yang Ling, the West Master of the Abyss, Luo Qingfeng, the North Master of the Abyss, Guoli, and the Middle Master of the Abyss, Yi Chen. The 5 Abyss Masters were a little surprised by Longao's sudden appearance. However, thinking of the mysterious Master's instructions, the 5 of them shrugged helplessly. So, before Long Batian left, he was worried that Longao would not be able to gain a foothold in the Tianwu continent alone. He could only let the 5 Abyss Masters of the Massacre Abyss help Longao. With the help of 5 Nirvana Realm martial artists, Longao's development speed would be faster. Regarding this, the 5 Abyss Masters did not know, and neither did Longao. The 5 of you, now I have something that I need your help with. I hope the 5 of you can help. Please tell us, Master. The 5 of them were not afraid of Longao, but of Long Batian. Otherwise, not to mention submitting to the Dragon Sect, the 5 of them would probably continue to fight head-on with Longao. In the end, it was really unknown who would win and who would lose. You have provoked 20 Supreme Martial Artists of the Divine Path and 100 Martial Artists of the Divine Path. Immediately get up and leave the Massacre Abyss with me. What was it? The 5 of them did not ask much, because the 5 of them knew what to ask, what not to ask, when to ask, and when not to ask. The 5 of them did not hesitate at all, and immediately chose people to leave the Massacre Abyss. On the way, Longao did not hide anything, and told them in detail about his feud with the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family. After listening, the 5 of them understood and nodded. However, the 5 of them were also a little depressed. If they wanted to deal with the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family at the same time with their strength alone, it would be like hitting a rock with an egg. They did not know what was good for them. The 5 of them were self-aware. Not to mention dealing with the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family at the same time, even if they were separated, it would be impossible for them to deal with any one of them casually. Of course, Longao knew what the 5 of them were thinking, but the safety of his family was more important. Even if he knew that it was impossible for him to deal with the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family at the same time, Longao knew that he had to do it. Longao kept warning himself that he could not be impulsive, or else it would only ruin his plan. Therefore, even if he asked the masters of the Massacre Abyss for help, he still did not act recklessly. Instead, he chose a place to settle down for the time being. On the 8th day, Longao still did not go to the Long family, which made the Long family and the Martial Artists Alliance wonder if Longao had chosen to give up his family. Even if he had given up, it was reasonable. After all, with the strength of Longao, as long as he hid and cultivated slowly, he would have a bright future. However, if Longao did not come, what could they do even if they destroyed the Longao? Their main target was Longao, not Longao's family. Just when the Long family and the Martial Artists Alliance thought that Longao would not appear, Longao's message had already reached the Long family. The general meaning was very simple. It was that if the Long family and the Martial Artists Alliance dared to touch a hair on his family, Longao would not fight them head-on. Instead, he would launch sneak attacks and assassinations in the future. With Longao's strength, 5 Nirvana Realm warriors, 20 Supreme Divine Realm warriors, and hundreds of Supreme Divine Realm warriors, even the Long family and the Martial Artists Alliance would not be able to withstand the sneak attacks and assassinations. Long family. Clan leader, Longao was just scaring us. If he had the help of 5 Nirvana Realm warriors, would he still be like this? I believe that they would have come long ago. He nodded. Longao dared to cause trouble for the Martial Artists Alliance alone, let alone 5 Nirvana Realm warriors. Not only Long Hang, but even Long Ditian did not believe it. With Longao's crazy personality, he would not do something like this. It was just a bluff. Grand Elder. Rumble, rumble. Before Long Ditian could finish, the entire ground began to tremble. Chapter 13-15. What's going on? The ground trembled as if there was an earthquake. Black cracks started to appear on the ground. Not only that, a terrifying aura came pressing down. The aura of heaven and earth? Long Ditian and Long Hang looked at each other, and saw a trace of shock in each other's eyes. Because it was obvious that a Nirvana Realm martial artist was attacking the Long family. Who would dare to be so bold? The Long family was one of the top powers in the Sky Martial continent. Not to mention ordinary people, even the other 9 superpowers did not dare to casually provoke the Long family. Taking a step back. So what if the other party was a Nirvana Realm martial artist? In front of the Long family, even a Nirvana Realm martial artist would have to be obedient. Long Ditian, listen up. Longao? Hearing the voice, Long Ditian finally knew who it was. It was none other than the Long family's biggest worry, Longao. Longao was not joking, there really was a Nirvana Realm martial artist helping him. This was going to be troublesome. Long Ditian was very clear what it meant for a few Nirvana Realm martial artists to help Longao. If it was an open and above-board fight, he would not be afraid at all. What he was afraid of was that Longao would bring a few Nirvana Realm martial artists and play tricks on the Long family. If that was the case, how would the Long family deal with it? Without the slightest hesitation. It was impossible for Long Ditian to let Longao continue to cause trouble like this. He and Long Hang's body had already rushed out, and along with them, the 10 elders of the Long family had also appeared in the sky. Longao did not leave. Not only Longao, there were also 5 people behind him. There were the 5 Abyss Masters of the Massacre Abyss, the so-called 5 Nirvana Realm martial artists. Sensing the heaven and earth aura released by the 5 of them, whether it was Long Ditian, Long Hang, or the 10 elders, they could not figure out how Longao did it. Longao, you dare attack my Long family? Why wouldn't I dare? Hearing Long Ditian's words, Longao felt a little disdainful. His face was filled with ridicule and contempt. Was such a person worthy of being the head of a Long family? The main reason he came here this time was to attack the Long family. Otherwise, would he have nothing better to do? Long Tian, let go of my family and I will let bygones be bygones. Otherwise, ha 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 ha. Before Longao could finish speaking, the 10 elders behind Long Tian started laughing maniacally. Their laughter was filled with disdain, as though they had just heard the funniest joke in the world. Longao, aren't you being a little too arrogant? He waved his hand. After stopping Longao from continuing, Long Tian sneered and said, Longao, do you think you can leave the Long family alive after coming here? Just as Long Tian finished speaking, 9 heaven and earth auras appeared behind him. 9 Nirvana martial artists. There was no need to guess at all. Longao already knew who the person behind him was. Other than Tong Zun and the other 9 people from the Martial Artists Alliance, he couldn't think of any other place that could have 9 Nirvana martial artists at once. Pincer attack. Longao, long time no see. Turning around, Longao looked at Tong Zun and smiled. Tong Zun, since you want to deal with me, why didn't you attack me back at Longao Peak? Isn't it unnecessary? Longao was curious, but he couldn't figure it out either. Back at Longao Peak, he was already trapped. As long as Tong Zun was willing, he didn't even know if he would live or die. But in the end, Tong Zun suddenly stopped attacking him and gave up that opportunity for no reason. Longao thought that Tong Zun and the Martial Artists Alliance wouldn't attack him for the time being, but he was wrong. Because of this, Longao couldn't figure it out. Why didn't Tong Zun attack him back then? Longao, you won't know the reason even if you die. Of course, Tong Zun wouldn't tell the truth. Was he going to tell Longao and the world that the reason why he let Longao go last time was because he was afraid of Tian? If this was spread out, where would his dignity go? Wouldn't he be telling everyone that he was afraid of Tian? Tong Zun wouldn't let this happen. The 5 people behind Longao were extremely depressed. They didn't expect that the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family would have 20 Nirvana martial artists working together. 5 against 20. Didn't that mean that they would have to fight against 4 people, including Tong Zun, who was invincible among the Nirvana martial artists? After thinking about it, the 5 of them felt that they were going to die this time. They looked at Longao, but since things had already come to this point, the 5 of them didn't curse or attack. They could only take one step at a time and hope that they could leave this place smoothly. But could they really do it? Long Tian, if you dare to touch my family, I, Longao, can swear a blood oath that I will slaughter the Long family at any time. If you don't believe me, you can try. Hearing this, Long Tian's face turned ugly. It was better to be safe than sorry. If Longao really left this time, then things would be really troublesome. With the strength of Longao and the 5 of them, if they chose to assassinate, then no one in the Long family would be able to resist them. Even if it was the Martial Artists Alliance, other than Tong Zun, everyone else might be killed. Not only Long Tian, but everyone else, including Tong Zun, knew that Longao couldn't leave. Otherwise, it would be like letting a tiger go back to the mountain. Longao, can you leave? No one believed that Longao could leave this place alive. Not to mention the people from the Long family and the Martial Artists Alliance, even the 5 Lords of the Abyss didn't believe that Longao could leave this place alive. After all, there were 20 Nirvana Realm warriors. If Longao could leave this place successfully, then he wasn't a human. Longao, Shangguaniya, and the others had already used their divine artifacts to interfere with the spatial fluctuations around them. Because everyone knew that Longao had a spatial divine artifact, the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family were already prepared to prevent Longao from leaving this place with the help of the spatial divine artifact. From the beginning to the end. Whether it was the Martial Artists Alliance or the Long family, they didn't think about why Longao would suddenly come here. They knew that this was a trap. I can stay. The 5 of them have no grudges with you. Can they leave? No, they can't. Everyone knew what 5 Nirvana Realm warriors meant. If they let them go, they might try to assassinate them. At that time, how would the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family deal with them? Just in case, the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family wouldn't let them leave. Chapter 13:16. You guys leave first. Leave first? Hearing Longao's words, the 5 of them were dumbfounded. How were the 5 of them going to leave? There were wolves in front and tigers behind. The Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family had teamed up. There were a total of 20 Nirvana Realm martial artists with Tongzun among them. With such a powerful lineup, even if the 5 of them had 3 heads and 6 arms, they wouldn't be able to leave safely. The 5 of them even suspected that Longao was toying with them. Longao could guess what the 5 of them were thinking. He chuckled. This chuckle made the 5 of them even angrier. The 5 of us came here with you to die, but you're still toying with us at such a crucial moment. How shameless! As for Long Ditian, Tongzun, and the rest, they didn't attack immediately. They were confident that with such a lineup, even if they gave Longao a chance, Longao wouldn't be able to leave successfully. Let's go. Before the 5 of them could react, in the next moment, under everyone's shocked gazes, the 5 of them suddenly disappeared without a trace. What the hell happened? The spatial ripples had been disrupted. Both parties were confident that Longao couldn't leave with the help of a spatial divine item. If that was the case, how did Longao do it? Array. Tongzun's voice was cold. No one had expected Longao to be so skilled in array formations. Under the watchful eyes of so many experts, he sent the 5 of them away with the help of an array formation. Letting the tiger go back to the mountain would only cause trouble in the future. Longao is an array master? Regarding the matter of Longao being an array master, no one had thought of it, because from the beginning to the end, Longao had never used an array. What made everyone curious was that since Longao had sent the 5 of them away, why didn't he leave? Could it be that Longao wanted to fight against 20 of them alone? Tongzun, Long Ditian, I've already said that you can't keep me here. Why don't we try? If it was before, no one would have believed Longao's arrogance. They would have scoffed at him. But now, with the previous example, no one spoke because no one knew if Longao could really leave this place. What if Longao could really leave this place? The calmer Longao appeared, the more uncertain everyone felt. Seeing that no one was speaking, Longao smiled. Long Ditian, remember this. If you dare to hurt my family, I'll kill 100 of them. I'd like to see who's more ruthless, or the Martial Artists Alliance. Without giving either side a chance to speak, Longao smiled and said, Forgive me for not keeping you company. Goodbye. You want to leave? Before Tongzun could make a move, Longao had already disappeared. Did he just disappear like that? Everyone was slightly dumbstruck because from the beginning until the end, not a single one of them had imagined such an outcome. Longao would actually vanish just like this, vanish right under the noses of 20 Rebirth Realm martial artists like them. Is this true? Until now, no one was willing to believe that this was the truth. If news of this were to spread, no one would believe it. A total of 20 Rebirth Realm martial artists, almost all the top experts of the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family, had joined forces. Even so, they still couldn't keep Longao here. Tragedy. This was a tragedy. The tragedy of the Martial Artists Alliance was also the tragedy of the Long family. Senior, how did Longao do it? Until now, Long Ditian still couldn't believe that Longao could leave just by relying on the array. When he sent the 5 people away, he had indeed sensed the existence of the array. But now, when Longao left, there wasn't even a trace of spatial fluctuation. What was going on? How could Tongzun know? If Tongzun knew, Longao wouldn't have left so casually. Without saying a word, Tongzun's eyes were cold as he looked at the endless void in the distance. This time, Longao's demonstration was successful. Longao wasn't a fool. He knew that no matter what he did, his family would be killed in the end. As for himself, he was still an unknown. After thinking for a long time, in the end, Longao came up with a good idea, which was to make a show of strength to scare the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family with the strength of himself and the 5 Abyss Masters. In this way, the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family wouldn't dare to do anything to his family. 1 for 100. As long as the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family weren't stupid, they wouldn't do that. Moreover, before the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family dealt with him, they wouldn't act rashly. Otherwise, if Longao's family died, he would go crazy. By then, it would be a lie to say that the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family wouldn't suffer any losses. Just as Longao had guessed, if he didn't make a show of strength, he really didn't know what the result would be. But this time, the show of strength was obviously effective. Although Tong Zun and Longao didn't say it, they were both very afraid of Longao. If Longao really went crazy, no one could guarantee that they wouldn't be able to resist his sneak attack. After a few days of cleaning, Dragon Peak was restored to its previous appearance. This time, the 5 of them were able to leave successfully because of Longao's formation skills. It was all thanks to the help of the Wanjian School's master. That was why Longao couldn't figure out why the Wanjian School's master would help him. It seemed that they weren't friends at all. As for Longao's successful departure, Longao didn't go to the Long family with his real body, but with his reincarnated doppelganger. From the beginning to the end, no one, not even the 5 of them, knew that Longao wasn't the real Longao. He was just a doppelganger of Longao. If Longao's actions were known by the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family, who knew what they would do? After this incident, the 5 of them were completely convinced. The 5 of them vaguely remembered that the black-clothed man had found them and asked them to follow Longao. He had even said that if the 5 of them followed Longao, it wouldn't be impossible for them to reach the peak of martial arts in the future. From the beginning to the end, the 5 of them didn't believe the black-clothed man's words. But at this time, the 5 of them didn't know why, but they had a feeling that they might be able to reach the peak of martial arts if they followed Longao. The 5 of them were actually very realistic. If it wasn't for the black-clothed man's threat, they wouldn't have followed Longao and risked their lives to go to the Long family with Longao. Master, what should we do next? In the end, Longao still couldn't resist the Long family and the Martial Artists Alliance. Otherwise, Longao wouldn't have to run away. Even with the 5 of them, the Long family and the Martial Artists Alliance's strength couldn't be underestimated. And this was Longao. Ordinary people wouldn't dare to offend the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family casually. Even if Longao had many family members, they would not be able to withstand such a massacre. But what was the result? Not only did Longao successfully leave the Long family, he even threatened the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family. Did anyone believe it? Threatening the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family was simply asking for a rebuff. No one believed that the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family would be threatened by Longao. After all, if Longao had enough strength, he would not have left. He would have directly started a war. But in the end, whether it was the Martial Artists Alliance or the Long family, although they did not say it, their actions showed that they were really afraid of Longao. They did not dare to touch Longao's family casually. What on earth was going on? Could it be that the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family were really afraid of Longao? It was a little hard to believe. No matter what, the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family's strength was there. Under normal circumstances, the 2 superpowers would not take Longao seriously at all. All of this seemed to be a mystery in the eyes of others. They did not know what had happened between Longao and the 2 superpowers. Tianwu continent was in a mess. And the person who had caused all of this was Longao, who had just risen. If they had not seen it with their own eyes and heard it with their own ears, no one would be willing to believe that a person from the small Jiuzhou continent could turn Tianwu continent into such a mess. At this moment, Everyone was looking forward to seeing what would happen between Longao and the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family in the future. Humans were so complicated. Although they knew that Longao was no match for the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family, many people still wanted to see how Longao would destroy the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family. Everything was calm. After the battle between the Long family, whether it was the Martial Artists Alliance, the Long family, or Longao, all of them seemed to have stopped fighting. Everyone was not satisfied. But many people knew that although the two sides did not fight, it was inevitable. It was just a matter of time. It was the calm before the storm. Long family. In the main hall. Longao's smooth escape this time had worried Long Ditian and Long Hang to death. Both of them knew that as long as Longao was alive, he would always be a huge threat. Who knew when Longao would come back? However, they did not dare to kill Longao's family. Longao's threat had succeeded. If they killed one, Longao would kill 100. At that time, even if the Long family had countless people, it would not be enough for Longao to kill. Shame. This was the shame of the Long family. Even with the Martial Artists Alliance's help, Longao still managed to escape. There was no need to ask around. Long Ditian was sure that the entire Tianwu continent was talking about this. Long family had lost all face. Patriarch, what should we do now? Are we really not going to deal with Longao's family? Waving his hand, Long Ditian said helplessly. Follow me. Long Hang was very curious. He did not know where the Patriarch was going to take him. Without asking, the two of them left the main hall and walked towards the back mountain of the Long family. With their speed, they quickly arrived at their destination. In a huge courtyard. In the courtyard, there were at least tens of thousands of people coming and going. However, in the center, there were 3 people sitting. They were Longao's grandfather, Long Haoshi, Mu Wanfeng, and Wang Yidao. The 3 of them had the highest seniority in the Long family. After being captured by the Long family, everyone had already guessed what the Long family's purpose was. They wanted to capture them and use them to deal with their grandson. Long Haoshi, how is this place? Seeing Long Ditian and Long Hang suddenly appear, everyone retreated to the side. They were all incomparably angry. After the matter with Longao, the disciples of the Long family did not seem to be afraid of Long Ditian. In the past, in these people's eyes, Long Ditian was a high and mighty person. After all, Long Ditian was the patriarch of the Long family. The dragon race had 9 ranks, and the hierarchy was very strict. Patriarch, if you have something to say, just say it. There's no need to be like this, said Long Haoshi calmly. Chapter 13-18. He admired Long Haoshi in his heart. Long Ditian smiled and said, Long Haoshi, you and I are sensible people, so I'll get straight to the point. Long Haoshi waved his hand. After a short while, the crowd that had been coming and going earlier had disappeared without a trace. Mu Wanfeng and Wang Yidao did not leave. Long Haoshi, as long as you make Longao compromise, I can guarantee that I won't kill him. What do you think? What are your conditions? There was no free lunch in the world. Long Haoshi knew very well that Long Ditian would not be so kind. As long as his grandson compromised, things would not have turned out this way. It's very simple. As long as Longao hands over the spatial artifact, breaks his arms, and destroys his cultivation. Long Ditian said it so casually, but Long Haoshi and the other two's expressions changed. What a shameless Long Ditian! Long Haoshi and the other 2 were cursing Long Ditian in their hearts. Patriarch, forgive me for being powerless. What a joke. If he did that, how could he face his grandson? He believed that others would not agree, let alone himself. If he really did that, he alone would not be able to forgive himself. He was not surprised at all, nor was he angry at all. If Long Haoshi had agreed so quickly, he would have been surprised. Long Haoshi, you should know your current situation. I don't. Long Hang snorted, his face full of murderous intent. He waved his hand. Long Ditian stopped Long Hang and said with a smile, "Long Haosher, if you die, and the others die, what do you think will happen to Long Ao?" Long Haosher and the others did not know that Long Ao had barged into the Long family and fought with the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family. The Long family had blocked the news. If Long Haosher and the others knew that Long Ao had almost died in the Long family for them, what would they think? "Patriarch, don't waste your breath. If you want to kill, just kill." As for compromise, Long Haosher stood up and returned to his house with Mu Wafeng and Wang Yidao. "Patriarch, Long Haosher is fearless. Has he already received some news?" Long Ditian's expression was extremely gloomy. It was as ugly as it could get. Long family patriarch, when had he ever suffered such humiliation? Being ignored by the patriarch of a low-level family, if it was in the past, he would have already made a move. Endure. Long Ditian knew that he had to endure it. No matter what, Long Haosher was Long Ao's grandfather. If he didn't kill Long Ao and dealt with Long Haosher in advance, who knew what kind of madness Long Ao would go? Without the example of the Martial Artists Alliance, Long Ditian would not be so careful. However, the situation now was completely different. The Martial Artists Alliance was a living example. Long Ditian did not want to take the risk. If his Long family suffered any losses, he would not be able to answer to his family. Long family could not afford to lose even one Nirvana Realm martial artist, let alone two Nirvana Realm martial artists. "Don't kill them for now. Patriarch." Long Hang was unwilling to accept being ignored by Long Haosher. Not to mention how they would lose face if word got out. How could he swallow this anger? How could Long Ditian not know what the Great Elder was thinking? After thinking for a while, he said, "To be safe, it's best that we deal with Long Ao. As for Long Haosher and the rest..." Long Ditian did not finish his sentence, but the meaning behind his words was very clear. In his eyes, Long Haosher and the rest were no different from ordinary people. As long as Long Ao was not a threat, he could kill Long Haosher at any time. It was as simple as killing an ant. Long Haosher's unwillingness to compromise left Long Ditian and the rest with no other choice. Long Ao's threat was too great, especially after what happened to the Martial Artists Alliance. As a result, the Long family did not dare to act rashly. They were afraid that Long Ao would go crazy and cause both sides to suffer losses. At that time, wouldn't the Long family go for wool and come home shorn? "Long Fu, is there any way to locate my family?" Long Ao did not act rashly. Before he could confirm the exact location, if he was discovered by the Long family, the consequences would be unimaginable. "Master, I have already tried before. There is no problem with the exact location. As for how you are going to move them, that is a big problem." Long Hang nodded. With regards to Long Fu's meaning, Long Ao was very clear about Long Ao's intentions. The family and the dragon sect had more than 10,000 people. It was almost impossible to move 10,000 people at the same time. Furthermore, Long Ao was very clear that the Long family would definitely guard them strictly. If he was unable to move them as quickly as possible, the second move would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. He had to think of a foolproof plan. What should he do? "Master, if you want to save everyone, there is only one way." Hearing that Long Fu had a way to save his family, Long Ao was immediately overjoyed. He could not wait to ask. These days, Long Ao had not been able to eat or sleep well. He could not even calm down to cultivate. It was all because he was worried about his family. Long Ao would rather die than see anything happen to his family. "Master, the Long family mainly wants to deal with you this time. If there is no accident, I believe that the Long family will have set up many traps. This time, even if we can locate them, Master, once you enter, I am afraid that you will be in great danger." Long Ao nodded again. The Long family went through so much trouble just to get rid of him. The Long family probably wanted him to walk right into their trap. It seemed that he really had to be careful not to fall into a deep pit and harm himself. "Long Fu, then what should I do now?" Master, actually, my method is very simple. That is to use the reincarnation avatar to lure all the experts of the Long family away. At that time, Master will personally go to the Long family to save them. However, doing so will be very dangerous. Dangerous? Was he afraid of danger? For his family, no matter what danger it was, Longao was not afraid. With regards to Long Fu's method, Longao almost understood. In the end, he still needed the help of the reincarnation avatar. After thinking for a while, Long Fu, this is not a problem. The only thing I am worried about now is that even if I can successfully enter the Long family and find the target, what should I do to move everyone at the same time? Longao was very clear about Long Fu's character. If it was not for the fact that he had no other choice, Long Fu would definitely not say this. It seemed that Long Fu had already thought of a solution. As expected. Master, although I have no way to let these people enter the Dragon Seal space, I have a way to move them at the same time. Chapter 13-19. This was all Long Fu could do. Longao knew that everything depended on himself. Danger. In front of his family's safety, he didn't know how to spell the word danger. Longao didn't immediately take action. Instead, he calmed down and prepared to cultivate for a few days. Ever since his cultivation base had broken through to the deity realm, Longao had been constantly cultivating. He knew that as he ventured deeper into the Tianwu continent, strength would become more important to him. With strength, he could do whatever he wanted. Without strength, it would be difficult to take even a single step. This was the reality. This was the law of survival in a dog-eat-dog world. Longao couldn't change the world. He only had the ability to change himself. That was exactly the case. Longao constantly told himself that he had to become stronger. Although the deity realm and the earth god realm were only separated by one level, the difference in strength was too great. They weren't even on the same level. Longao had a feeling that his cultivation seemed to be on the verge of a breakthrough. He had to grasp this crucial moment. The stronger he was, the greater his chances of success. Dragon Peak. Within a hidden cave, Longao sat on the ground, circulating the 9-cycle reincarnation technique. The greatest difference between the deity realm and the earth god realm was the power of their divine domains. Deities had their own divine domains, while earth gods had their own divine domains. Therefore, in order to break through from the deity realm to the earth god realm, he had to first transform his deity divine domain into an earth god divine domain. This step sounded easy, but in reality, it was extremely difficult. Longao hadn't thought that he would break through again so quickly after breaking through from the spirit condensation realm to the deity realm. If he hadn't experienced it himself, he wouldn't have believed it. Longao was already very satisfied with this cultivation speed. Within Longao's body, his deity divine domain was slowly transforming into an earth god divine domain. Once the transformation was complete, Longao's breakthrough would be considered a true success. In truth, the reason Longao was able to advance so quickly wasn't because of Longao's cultivation talent, nor was it because of the desolate saint physique. It was the real reason. Longao had successfully broken through to the 3rd cycle of the 9-cycle reincarnation technique. With the help of the reincarnation power, he was able to break through from the deity realm to the earth god realm so quickly. Regarding this point, even Longao had never thought of it. Once he broke through to the deity realm, Longao would be just a step away from the deity realm. The divine Tao was so far away from the nirvana realm. But in Longao's heart, he had always believed that he would definitely be able to reach the nirvana realm. The ancestral hall of the Long clan, the draconic arcane realm of the Dragon clan. Both places could lead to the same place, which was the so-called dark space. In the entire martial heaven continent, there were very few people who knew about the black space. But there was an incomparably powerful expert sealed within the black space. The Black Demon was a super expert who was above the heavenly Tao. Black Devil's expression was extremely gloomy when he saw Master God Diviner appear in front of him. Master God Diviner, 10,000 years ago, you destroyed my physical body and sealed me here. I'll settle this debt with you sooner or later. Is that so? Master God Diviner's lips curled into a cold smile, as if he didn't think much of Black Devil. After all, if Master God Diviner could destroy Black Devil's body and seal it here, then he could easily destroy Black Devil himself. That was why Master God Diviner didn't care about Black Devil's threat at all. Hey Mo, I know your strength very well. Not to mention the current you, even if you were at your peak, you wouldn't be my opponent. I don't have time to talk nonsense with you. I'm here for that matter. Why should I tell you? Master God Diviner didn't get angry in the slightest. His expression was still indifferent. However, anyone familiar with Master God Diviner would know that in this situation, he was the most terrifying existence. Black Devil, I don't have time to waste with you. Promise me, and I can let you leave here. I can even help you reform your physical body. If you don't, I'll directly devour your soul. You should know what that means. If he said he wasn't afraid, he would be lying. Of course, Black Demon knew what it would mean if his soul was devoured. If his soul was devoured, it meant that his soul would never be able to enter the cycle of reincarnation. In other words, it would vanish like smoke. No one wanted to end up like that. Furthermore, Black Devil's cultivation base had already reached this level. He didn't want to die. Black Devil was very clear that as long as his soul wasn't destroyed, he still had a chance to live. But once his soul was destroyed, he wouldn't even have a chance. Could it be that he had to promise Master God Diviner? If he had promised Master God Diviner, he would have done so 10,000 years ago. There was no need to wait until now. Seeing that Black Devil didn't speak, Master God Diviner said, Black Devil, you and I have no enmity. If you hadn't trespassed on my territory, I wouldn't have killed you. But since I know your secret, why don't you tell me and you can continue to live? Otherwise, once you die, what's the point of keeping your secret? Black Devil still didn't speak, but his face became gloomier. Black Devil had a feeling that even if he told the secret, Master God Diviner wouldn't let him go. Tell? Or don't tell? Hey Devil was stuck between a rock and a hard place. Although he didn't want to admit it, he knew that Master God Diviner was far more powerful than him. Even if he continued to grow stronger, he still wouldn't be a match for Master God Diviner, let alone when he was at his peak. Revenge was no longer an option. Master God Diviner, I can tell you this secret, but you have to promise me 3 things. Otherwise, even if I have to die, I won't tell you this secret. Black Devil had already made up his mind. This matter concerned his life and death. If he wasn't careful, he would be consigned to eternal damnation. So he had to be careful with each step. He couldn't fall into Master God Diviner's trap. Tell me. Master God Diviner wasn't a fool. He wouldn't agree directly. If Black Devil asked him to kill himself, would he kill himself? That was impossible. As the #1 expert of the Martial Heaven continent, the Master God Diviner was a wily old fox. He wouldn't make such a low-level mistake. My requests are very simple. First, you have to swear a blood oath to help me reform my physical body and return to my peak state. Furthermore, you can never kill me. Second, you have to help me break through my final bottleneck. As for the final condition, I want a share of the treasures you obtain. You can't keep them for yourself. Chapter 1320. Strictly speaking, none of Heimo's 3 conditions were too much. After all, the secret belonged to Heimo. Would Master Clairvoyant agree? In fact, Heimo wasn't confident because he didn't know whether Master Clairvoyant would agree or not. Before Master Clairvoyant could answer, Heimo said, Master Clairvoyant, you don't have to think about soul searching. If you were confident, you wouldn't have sealed me here 10,000 years ago. Master Clairvoyant stared at Heimo. As Heimo said, he wasn't confident that he could successfully soul-searching. If he failed, he would lose the secret forever. Master Clairvoyant didn't want to gamble, nor did he dare to. He didn't care about Heimo's life at all. The only thing he cared about was the secret in Heimo's hands. Heimo, I can agree to your 3 conditions. He was overjoyed. All right, if that's the case, I'll tell you. An hour later, in the dark space, crazy laughter filled every inch of the space. Heimo's figure kept growing bigger and bigger. Ha ha ha, 10,000 years, 10,000 years, I've finally broken the seal. Well, follow me. Master Clairvoyant's words were like a bucket of cold water poured over Heimo's head. However, he had no choice. He was weaker than Master Clairvoyant, so he could only follow him. Master Clairvoyant and Heimo soon disappeared in the dark space. Dragon Peak, in a secluded cave. After a day and a night of cultivation, Longao's mortal god realm had all transformed into Earth God realm. That was to say, Longao had officially become an Earth God. It was still the same sentence. The mortal god realm and the Earth God realm were only one level apart, but the gap between the two was huge. Longao had a feeling that his current strength had increased by at least 1/6. Below the divine realm, including the divine realm, Longao had to have full confidence that he could become an invincible existence. He stood up. Now that he had made a breakthrough, there was only one thing to do, and that was to think of all kinds of ways to save his family. Long family, here I come. It was a dark night with a bright moon in the sky. A silhouette flashed by like a breeze in the dark night. Because it was too fast, it was impossible to see the silhouette clearly. Even the afterimage could not be seen. The person who came was none other than Longao. After thinking about it, Longao decided to give it a try. After all, if he couldn't save his family, he would never forgive himself for the rest of his life. Long family. Back of the mountain. Longao's figure had just stepped in when the originally pitch-black surroundings suddenly became brightly lit. Longao, I've been waiting for you for a long time. I'm really disappointed that you took so long to come. Seeing the sudden appearance of Long Ditian, Tong Zun, and the others, Longao was not surprised at all. This was because he had already guessed that the place where the Long family was trapped must have been set up by the Long family. Once he stepped in, he would definitely be surrounded and attacked. Despite knowing that there are tigers on the mountain, one still goes up the mountain. If it were anyone else, even if their family was trapped, how many people would dare to take such a risk? After all, the strength of the Long family was there for all to see. Not to mention ordinary people. Even the other 9 great forces would not dare to casually provoke the Long family. However, Longao was not afraid of danger. Even if he knew that it was very dangerous for him to come to the Long family, he still came without hesitation. It was not for anything else, but for his family. Long Ditian, Tong Zun, let my family go. I'll let you do whatever you want with me. Otherwise, you won't be able to keep me here. If you anger me, we'll go our separate ways. At that time, I can guarantee that the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family will disappear from this continent. Before the two of them could speak, Longao continued. It's up to you to believe it or not. Longao was like a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water. Tong Zun and Long Ditian were a little solemn. If Longao really did that, the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family would not be able to deal with him. They didn't have the slightest bit of fear when fighting openly. They were only afraid that Longao would sneak up on them and assassinate them. At that time, they would be in big trouble. Longao, do you really think you have what it takes? Tong Zun sneered, as if he did not care about Longao's threat at all. In fact, Tong Zun was already very afraid of Longao. Otherwise, he would not be so anxious to deal with Longao. Longao was able to obtain such strength in such a short period of time. Furthermore, he had the secret skill to increase his strength. Who knew what would happen to him in the long run? Tong Zun did not know. If he did not remove the roots, they would grow again. Tong Zun did not dare to take the risk. Therefore, Longao had to die. Even if he lost a little, it would be worth it in Tong Zun's eyes. That was indeed the case. Before Longao came, Tong Zun and Long Di Tian had already discussed it. Once Longao came this time, no matter what happened, they had to keep him here. They could not let Longao escape again. Tong Zun, I can promise you that as long as you let me stay in my family, I will not leave. I will be at your disposal. What do you think? How can I believe you? I can make a blood oath. Longao did not have any chance. At the beginning, he wanted to follow Long Fu's plan to save his family. However, after thinking about it, Longao changed his plan. After all, this way, the chances of success would be higher. Seeing Longao make a blood oath, Long Di Tian and Tong Zun looked at each other. The two of them did not expect that Longao would really make a blood oath. After all, this meant that Longao was going to be captured. Was this real? It was precisely because of this that everyone admired Longao. For the sake of his own family, there were not many people who could do such a thing. Senior, what should we do now? Long Di Tian did not know what to do now that things had reached this stage. In his heart, Long Di Tian wanted to agree to Longao's request. After all, he did not want to anger Longao. Otherwise, he would not be able to bear the loss of his Long family. Tong Zun thought for a moment and said, Longao, since this is the case, I can agree to it. He was overjoyed. It seemed like his plan had worked. Tong Zun, Long Di Tian, I will make a blood oath. I hope that the two of you will also make a blood oath. From today onwards, you will not go against my family. If not, the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family will die a horrible death. Longao was not a fool. Only when Tong Zun and Long Di Tian made a blood oath would this matter be considered complete, and his method would be considered a success. No problem. As long as they could kill Longao, Tong Zun and Long Di Tian did not care about Longao's family. Chapter 13:21. Tong Zun and Long Di Tian's main target was Longao. As for Longao's family, they didn't care whether they were dead or alive. There was no suspense. In order not to suffer any losses, both Tong Zun and Long Di Tian swore a blood oath. They heaved a sigh of relief. Longao didn't say anything and waited for them to make their move. As expected. In a short while, Long Haosher and tens of thousands of people appeared in front of Longao. Tong Zun smiled and said, Longao, are you satisfied? Aoer. Grandpa, you guys leave first. Longao used his spiritual consciousness to tell Long Haosher what he wanted. In order not to implicate his grandson, Long Haosher nodded and immediately left with everyone from Dragon Sect. In less than 5 minutes, the tens of thousands of people had all disappeared into the night. Shangguaniye's figure disappeared. Longao could obviously see it, but he ignored it because he could guess what Shangguaniye wanted to do. Longao, we've already released your family. Shouldn't you fulfill your promise and surrender? He shrugged his shoulders indifferently. At the foot of a mountain not far from the Long family. Aoer you? Seeing Longao suddenly appear in front of them, Long Haosher and Long Yi were surprised. They didn't want their grandson and son to get into an accident because of them. Longao, the godlike existence of Dragon Sect. Grandpa, I'll deal with them first, then we'll leave. As expected. Shangguaniye followed Long Haosher and the others quickly. When he saw Longao, Shangguaniye was stunned and seemed to be in disbelief. Shouldn't Longao be at the Long family? If that's the case, why is Longao here? What the hell happened? Longao you. Shangguaniye didn't continue after saying, you, 3 times because he didn't know what to say. Even with Longao's speed, he couldn't have been that fast. Moreover, Longao couldn't possibly leave his Long family. Old thief Shangguan, are you surprised to see me? Longao, you really are Longao. Long Haosher and the others didn't laugh when they heard Shangguaniye's words. They were also curious. Could it be that Longao had a clone? Shangguaniye, let's talk about our grudges in the future. Right now, I don't have time to waste here with you. Grandpa, let's go. Without lingering any longer, Longao led Longao and the others away. From the beginning to the end, Shangguaniye did not chase after them, as Longao was too mysterious. The more mysterious he was, the more he feared him. Just like that, Shangguaniye watched Longao leave. Gradually, the tens of thousands of people disappeared without a trace. Shangguaniye didn't dare to stay any longer. He immediately turned around and returned to the Long family. His intuition told him that Longao must have come prepared when he came to the Long family. Otherwise, there couldn't be two Longaos at the same time. From the beginning to the end, Shangguaniye didn't know how Longao did it. Aoer, what's going on? In order to let his grandfather and parents feel at ease, Longao roughly recounted everything that had happened during this period of time. Long Haosher nodded his head after he finished listening. Long Haosher and Long Yi knew very well that although Longao made it sound easy, it was actually very dangerous. After all, Longao was facing the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family, one of the 10 tripod forces, the real superpowers in the Tianwu continent. Ordinary people wouldn't dare to offend the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family. Aoer, you've worked hard during this period of time. He didn't say anything else. Long Haosher was very confident in his grandson. He asked, Aoer, what should we do now? Ao had offended the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family. If they continued to implicate Aoer, not only them, but also Aoer would die. Long Haosher didn't want to implicate Long Ao. How could Long Ao not know what his grandfather meant? Long Ao had already thought about this. Otherwise, he wouldn't have acted rashly this time. Even if he could save his family, he had to think of a way to deal with it. Long Ao knew that this kind of thing couldn't happen a second time. If it really happened, he would kill himself. Grandfather, you can't go back to the dragon sect. As for Long Ao's mountain, you should go back too. I've already found a good place in the Jiuzhou continent. I believe that neither the Martial Artists Alliance nor the Long family can find you. Long Ao then told his grandfather about his doubts. He suspected that there was a spy in the dragon sect. Otherwise, it wouldn't be easy for Tong Zun and Long Di Tian to find his family. Aoer, I know what to do. We'll go back to the Jiuzhou continent. What about you? Grandfather, the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family won't let me go. Since that's the case, I won't let this go. I want to see how the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family will deal with me. Long Ao had already thought about this. He couldn't hide it. If he did, wouldn't he be telling everyone that he was afraid of the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family? The situation was already in front of him. It was either you die or I die. Since that's the case, he might as well take the initiative and play with the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family. Before Long Haosher could finish, Long Ao continued. Grandfather, you don't have to worry about me. I know what I'm doing. Long Haosher and Long Yi looked at their son and grandson in front of them. For a moment, the three of them didn't know what to do. The three of them knew Long Ao's personality very well. Once he decided on something, he wouldn't change his mind. Otherwise, he wouldn't have offended the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family. Long Haosher knew that since his grandson had already decided, there was no point in him saying anything. He could only say helplessly, Aoer, you have to be careful. Remember, no matter what happens, you can't act recklessly. Not only do you have to think about yourself, you have to think about the entire dragon sect. Once you die, no one in the dragon sect will be spared. Do you understand? Long Ao obviously knew how serious he was. He nodded and said with a smile, Grandfather, don't worry. I won't act recklessly. All the Divine Dragon Corps slaves and the 10 Supreme Divine Warriors will follow you. Okay. After sending Long Haosher away, Long Ao turned around and looked in the direction of the Long family. This battle was inevitable. Even if he knew that he couldn't defeat the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family, Longao didn't intend to retreat. After all, what was to come would come. Otherwise, if he took a step back, the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family would take a step forward. Chapter 1322. This time, Longao did not use the power of the Massacre Abyss. From the beginning to the end, Longao did not trust the 5 Lords of the Deep Caves. Until now, he still did not know why the 5 of them would submit to the dragon sect for no reason. Was it because of his strength? Not to mention others, even he himself did not believe it. If that was the case, Longao was very worried. Once he used the power of the 5 to escort his family back to the Jiuzhou continent, wouldn't he become a sinner if the 5 of them harmed his family? As for dealing with the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family, Longao did not use the power of the 5 either. The reason was simple. Whether the 5 of them really submitted to him or not, Longao wanted to save them for last. This time, he was prepared to deal with the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family alone. Long family? Back mountain. Long Ditian sneered and said, Longao, since you know what's good for you, I'll give you a chance. Long Ditian looked at Tong Zun and asked, Senior, do you want to do it or should I? You. Tong Zun and Long Ditian's current behavior was as if Longao was a cabbage that they were pushing around. Although Longao was very angry, he did not act rashly. If he acted rashly at this time, he would only die. Longao, hand over the spatial artifact and all the secrets on your body, including the secret techniques, and cripple your cultivation. As for your arms, we can keep them for you. We can be considered to have done our best, how about it? Shameless. Hearing Long Ditian's words, Longao felt a deep sense of disdain. He had seen shameless people before, but he had never seen someone as shameless as him. He could not understand how someone like Long Ditian could become the clan leader of the Long family. Long Ditian, do you think I'll agree? There was no anger. Longao, it's okay if you don't agree. When you die, we can search your soul. By then, no matter what we want, it'll be easy for us. What do you think? Soul search? It would be a lie to say that he wasn't afraid. Longao knew how to search souls as well, so he naturally knew what it meant. Longao didn't say anything. He only sneered. From the beginning to the end, Tong Zun and Long Ditian didn't realize that something was wrong. This was because to them, Longao had already made a blood oath. He was basically a piece of meat on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Ditian, let's begin. Tong Zun couldn't wait any longer. Tong Zun felt that Longao was a threat, so he had to deal with him as soon as possible. Then, everything would be fine. But at this moment, the 2 of you, I just made a blood oath to allow you to do whatever you want with me. I've already given you a chance, but you didn't take it. Farewell. This again. The reincarnation doppelganger was about to leave when he was stopped. Not far away. Longao was shocked. This was because he had just summoned his reincarnation doppelganger. He was supposed to be able to summon his reincarnation doppelganger back, but for some reason, he couldn't summon his reincarnation doppelganger back. Longao didn't know what was going on because this had never happened before. Longao knew that no matter what happened, nothing must happen to his reincarnation doppelganger. This was because he already knew that he couldn't summon his reincarnation doppelganger back. It was definitely Tong Zun and Long Ditian's doing, although he didn't know how they did it. Longao's figure appeared. There were 2 Longaos. They were exactly the same. Even their auras were the same. Huh! Looking at the sudden appearance of another Longao, everyone, including Tong Zun and Long Ditian, was dumbfounded. Could it be that Longao was a twin? Longao you? He waved his hand. Longao's face was filled with impatience. He sneered and said, Tong Zun, Long Ditian, I have already fulfilled my promise. It's you guys who aren't confident. I'm going to leave now. I'd like to see how you guys are going to stop me. Tong Zun and Long Ditian's faces were extremely ugly. This was because no one knew how many secrets Longao had. Once Longao successfully left, things would get troublesome. Kill! Long Ditian wasn't willing to wait any longer. While Tong Zun and the rest were here, the 20 Nirvana Realm martial artists would attack together. The chances of them killing Longao were still very high. But at this moment, Ditian, that's enough. Hearing the sudden appearance of the figure, everyone was dumbfounded. Even Tong Zun didn't expect it. Long Ditian, Long Hang and the rest were even more surprised. They knelt down on one knee and shouted in unison. Greetings, old ancestor. The Long family's old ancestor, Long Tian? Looking at the two middle-aged men who suddenly appeared, Longao obviously wasn't unfamiliar with them. This was because he had seen Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon in his dream. That's right, the two who just appeared were Long Tian and the middle-aged man who was transformed from the primordial divine dragon. Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon didn't die. Everyone was shocked, including Longao and Tong Zun. This was because everyone knew that Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon worked together to fight against the heavenly Tao. In the end, they were defeated and fell. For the past 10,000 years, almost everyone believed that Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon had completely fallen. They didn't even have the chance to enter reincarnation. Ditian, this matter ends here. Even if they didn't want to, Long Ditian and Long Heng didn't dare to say a word. Moreover, the two old ancestors were still alive. This was even better than killing Longao. This was because the two of them knew what the sudden appearance of the two old ancestors meant. Originally, the Long family was already weaker than the Martial Artists Alliance. However, with the arrival of the old ancestors, the Long family was no longer afraid of the Martial Artists Alliance. Brother Tong, it's been 10,000 years. How have you been? Tong Zun was a little stunned. He originally thought that Long Tian was dead, but now, not only was Long Tian alive, but the primordial divine dragon was also alive. There was no need to talk about the strength of the man and the dragon. Back then, they dared to fight against the heavenly Tao. This in itself showed how strong Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon were. However, Tong Zun wasn't afraid at all. This was because 10,000 years ago, he and Long Tian were both super geniuses. In a one-on-one situation, Tong Zun wasn't too worried. Brother Long, I believe you know about Longao's matter. I hope that the Long family won't interfere in the grudge between me and Longao. Consider it as giving me some face. How about it? Things had already reached this stage, but Tong Zun still didn't choose to give up. No matter what happened, Longao must die today. Tong Zun didn't dare to wait, and he couldn't afford to wait. Who knew what would happen to Longao in the future? What if Longao could threaten him? It wasn't wrong to take precautions. However, would Long Tian agree? Brother Tong, I won't interfere in the grudge between you and Longao. Hearing this, Tong Zun was instantly happy. He was worried that Long Tian would interfere in this matter. If that happened, things would be troublesome. Chapter 1323. But before Tong Zun could finish being happy, Brother Tong, although I can ignore the grudge between you and Longao, you have to promise me one thing. Please tell me, Brother Long. Tong Zun's intuition told him that it wasn't that simple. Could it be that Long Tian wanted to help Longao? Not likely. If it was in the past, Long Tian's actions would be understandable. After all, Longao belonged to the Long family. But now, Longao had left the Long family and established his own dragon sect. This meant that even Longao didn't admit that he was a disciple of the Long family. If that was the case, Long Tian didn't have to help Longao. Not only that, the grudge between Longao and the Long family wasn't any worse than Tong Zun's. Could it be that Long Tian would help Longao against the Long family? Brother Tong, this is my Long family. I can ignore the grudge between you and Longao, but it's not limited to the Long family. What did that mean? Tong Zun was not an idiot. He already understood that Long Tian was helping Longao in disguise. Before Tong Zun could say anything, Long Tian continued. Brother Tong, as long as Longao leaves the Long family, I won't interfere. I won't see you out. An eviction order. Long Tian wasn't afraid of Tong Zun. Unless the marvelous mathematician and Tian Dao came, they wouldn't be afraid of anyone, including Tong Zun. Tong Zun was also aware of this. Tong Zun snorted. Without further ado, Tong Zun turned around and left with Tong Tiandi and the others. In just a short while, Tong Zun and the others had disappeared into the dark night. Tong Zun chose to compromise in the end. However, he wouldn't leave. He would stay outside the Long family and wait for Longao to come out. He didn't believe that Longao would be able to escape without Long Tian's help. Senior, thank you. He was a senior, not an ancestor. The way Longao addressed Long Tian had already made his stance clear. Before Long Di Tian and Long Heng could get angry, Long Tian waved his hand and said with a smile, Longao, we finally meet. I'm looking forward to that day. Does the elder ancestor know Longao? Hearing the conversation between the old ancestor and Longao, even if Long Di Tian and the others were idiots, they would still be able to understand the meaning behind it. Precisely because of this, everyone was extremely shocked. They did not know how the old ancestor knew Longao. The timing didn't seem right either. Di Tian, all of you should leave. What was going on? They were surprised and shocked, but Long Di Tian and the others still slowly left. But no matter what, the arrival of the old ancestor was a great thing for the Long family. For so many years, the Long family had actually been very bitter. Ever since Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon had been defeated by the heavenly Tao, the status of the dragon race and the Long family in the continent had become very awkward. Now that the two old ancestors had suddenly arrived, if news of this spread, the status of the Long family and the dragon race in the continent would instantly rise. Back Mountain. After Tong Zun, Long Di Tian and the others had all left, there were only 3 people left in the Back Mountain: Longao, Long Tian, and the primordial divine dragon. Longao, you should know my expectations for you. Since that's the case, why did you choose to leave the family? Dissatisfaction. Long Tian had originally planned to nurture Longao. Otherwise, he would not have given the dragon's seal to Longao. But what was the result? Long Tian had never imagined that Longao would choose to leave the family and establish the dragon sect. Not only that, the enmity between the Longao and the family seemed to have reached the point where they could not tolerate each other. It would be unrealistic to say that he was not angry. Longao, of course, could sense the dissatisfaction that was being emitted from Long Tian. Senior, the enmity between me and the Long family was not initiated by me. Continue. In the beginning, I was proud that I was a disciple of the Long family. But as time passed, I no longer thought that way. Longao did not try to hide anything. He roughly explained what he was thinking and what he had done in the Scarlet Fire town back then. After listening to him, Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon looked at each other. They had never thought about what happened next, nor did they know about it. In their hearts, they had always hoped to break through the martial Dao pinnacle realm and defeat Tian Dao. If that was the case, there would be a problem with the hierarchy of the family. At the very least, such a hierarchy would not allow the disciples of the family to have a sense of belonging. But it was too late. Longao had already left the family and established the dragon sect. Both Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon knew that Longao would not withdraw from the dragon sect under such circumstances and choose to submit to the family. Losing such a genius, Long Tian was more or less a little disappointed. Longao, let's not talk about this for now. The enmity between you and the family will be written off from now on. As for the enmity between you and Tong Zun, forgive me for not being able to help. Understood. Longao had never thought that Long Tian would help him. He had no complaints because no matter who it was, it would be the same. On one side, it was the Martial Artists Alliance and Tong Zun. On the other side, it was him. He believed that no matter who it was, they would choose Tong Zun and the Martial Artists Alliance instead of him. It was better to rely on oneself than to rely on others. No matter when, relying on external help was not the right thing to do. Long Fu. As Long Tian's voice rang out, Long Fu's figure appeared. Seeing that the two patriarchs were still alive, Long Fu was pleasantly surprised. However, he immediately felt helpless because both of them were masters. What should he do? Old. Looking at Longao, Long Fu didn't say old master in the end. Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon were startled. They hadn't thought that Long Fu would waver. In their opinion, as long as they wanted to, they could take back the dragon seal at any time. The two of them were very clear on what the dragon seal meant. In the martial heaven continent, the dragon seal was the strongest divine item. Long Tian cursed inside, but his expression was very calm. Long Fu, we've already been reborn. According to our previous agreement, shouldn't you return to my side now? Longao wasn't the slightest bit surprised. After all, the dragon seal belonged to him now. It wasn't something that Long Tian could take back whenever he wanted. Furthermore, Longao also wanted to see what Long Fu would choose. Long Tian, primordial divine dragon, we did have an agreement back then. But the premise was that Longao couldn't pass my test. Hearing Long Fu's words, Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon were both shocked. The two of them seemed to already know what Long Fu was going to say next. If that was really the case, they would have really gone for wool and come home shorn. If they had known, they wouldn't have handed over the dragon seal no matter what. Chapter 13:24. Long Fu, what do you mean? In fact, Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon had already guessed that Long Fu would choose Longao. Back then, the two of them had fallen and entered the cycle of reincarnation, but they were unable to take the dragon seal away. Out of desperation, they could only think of this method: to find a successor. It was the dragon seal that Longao had inadvertently obtained in the Scarlet Fire Town's ancestral hall. According to their agreement, Long Fu would not take the initiative to recognize a master unless Long Fu approved of it. Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon were well aware of how difficult it was to make Long Fu recognize a master. Therefore, from the beginning to the end, Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon had never thought that Long Fu would really recognize Longao as his master. This was big trouble. Both Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon were very reluctant to lose the dragon seal for nothing. Sorry, I only have one master now, and that is Longao. Long Fu's meaning was very clear. After saying that, Long Fu's figure disappeared and returned to the dragon seal space. From the beginning to the end, Longao had not said a word. Only now did he truly heave a sigh of relief. He was really worried that Long Fu would choose Long Tian and not him. If that was the case, then wouldn't his efforts have been in vain? Longao. Long Tian was very angry and wanted nothing more than to kill Longao, but reason told him that this was absolutely impossible. Longao, since Long Fu has chosen you as his master, then from now on, you are the dragon seal's true master. Many thanks. Things having come to this point, Longao also did not know what to say. Go. If there is anything in the future, I will look for you. Goodbye. They were enemies, not friends. Longao had always thought that he and Long Tian were not friends. There was no such thing as a free lunch. The reason why Long Tian chose him was because he wanted to help him, not him. Looking at the gradually disappearing figure, the primordial mystical dragon said helplessly, Longao is too unpredictable. Neither you nor I expected that Long Fu would choose to recognize him as his master. What should we do now? Variables. Even now, Long Tian was still unable to react. Now, it seemed that Longao was indeed a huge variable. He said helplessly, "We cannot kill Longao at this time. Otherwise, our 10,000 years of preparation will go to waste." The primordial divine dragon did not continue speaking because he knew that nothing could go wrong with their 10,000 years of preparation. Longao did not immediately leave the Long family. Instead, he entered the dragon seal space. The reason was simple. Longao did not need to guess. He was sure that although Tong Zun and Tong Tiandi had left the Long family, they definitely did not leave. They were waiting for him outside. Once he appeared, he would definitely be besieged. 1 against 10. Longao knew himself very well. Furthermore, the sudden appearance of Long Tian and the primordial mystical dragon had made Longao a little flustered. Because from the beginning, Longao had never expected that Long Tian and the primordial mystical dragon were still alive and would choose to descend at this time. Could it be that Long Tian and the primordial mystical dragon were not afraid of the heavenly Tao? Could it be that the heavenly Tao was not present? Longao could only think of this possibility. If the heavenly Tao was present, Long Tian and the primordial mystical dragon would definitely not dare to appear. Just like before, when the dragon tribe was sealed by the heavenly Tao and was in imminent danger. Even so, Long Tian and the primordial mystical dragon did not appear in the end. They would rather sacrifice the Long family and the dragon tribe. The fact that Long Tian and the primordial mystical dragon did not appear was already a problem. Just as expected. The news of Long Tian and the primordial mystical dragon's sudden arrival spread through the entire martial heaven continent. Everyone who received the news turned pale with fright. All of them found it hard to believe. They did not know why Long Tian and the primordial mystical dragon would suddenly descend to the Long family. Hadn't Long Tian and the primordial mystical dragon already died? Since that was the case, then why hadn't Long Tian and the primordial mystical dragon appeared earlier? After all, the heavenly Tao had sealed the dragon tribe. At this time, the continent was abuzz with discussion. The biggest topic was Long Tian and the primordial mystical dragon's sudden arrival. Everyone was guessing why Long Tian and the primordial mystical dragon would suddenly appear. The contents of their guesses were roughly the same as Longao's. Long Tian and the primordial mystical dragon clearly knew that the heavenly Tao would deal with them. Why had they still descended? Were they not afraid of the heavenly Tao? Long Tian and the primordial mystical dragon's arrival caused the martial heaven continent to become even more simple and obscure. First, it was Tong Zun of the Martial Artists Alliance. Now, it was Long Tian of the Long family. Could it be that those old monsters from 10,000 years ago were still alive? Within the dragon seal space. Long Fu, what's going on? Long Fu seemed to have guessed that Longao would ask such a question. He wasn't the slightest bit surprised. He recounted everything that had happened. So that was the case. Longao helplessly nodded. In the end, his luck was pretty good. According to what Long Fu had said, if he hadn't obtained the dragon seal's approval, then not only would he have been unable to obtain his current accomplishments, he might have even died. Longao already understood that the so-called master recognition wasn't Long Fu recognizing him as master, but the dragon seal recognizing him as master. This was the greatest difference between him and Long Tian. Previously, Long Tian had been recognized as master by Long Fu, but not by the dragon seal. So even the current Long Tian was unable to take back the dragon seal. If it was him, as long as he didn't faint, he would be able to summon the dragon seal at any time. Longao was even more clear in his heart that even if Long Fu wanted to leave him and return to Long Tian's side, it seemed to have become impossible. After all, the dragon seal had already recognized him as its master. Even if it was Long Fu, there was nothing he could do. Master, forgive me for speaking bluntly, but Long Tian and the primordial mystical dragon seemed to be planning something big. Originally, 10,000 years ago, the two of them completely had the chance to merge with their core energy and reach the peak of the martial path. But at the final moment, the two of them chose to give up. Hearing Long Fu's words, Longao was a little surprised. Choosing to give up on merging with their core energy was equivalent to choosing to give up on reaching the peak of the martial path. The peak of the martial path was a realm that every cultivator dreamed of reaching. If that was the case, were Long Tian and the primordial mystical dragons stupid? Why would they choose to give up? If that was really the case, then this matter was really a little strange. After thinking about it, Longao really couldn't figure out what Long Tian and the primordial mystical dragon were planning to do that could surpass reaching the peak of the martial path. Long Fu didn't doubt Longao's words at all. No matter what, Long Fu had been following Long Tian all this time, so he definitely knew. It was just that he didn't know the reason. From this, one could imagine how gloomy Long Tian was. Even Long Fu didn't know. It was also because of this that Longao could almost be sure that Long Fu was treating him as master at this moment. Chapter 1325. Long Fu, you're saying that Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon's plan is related to me? Longao was not a fool. He was able to discern a trace of clues from Long Fu's words. It seemed impossible. But 10,000 years ago, he was not even born yet. Could it be that Long Tian had the ability to predict the future? Master, you're right. Although I don't know what they want, it definitely has something to do with you. Looking at the hesitant Long Fu, Longao was curious. He said, Long Fu, what do you want to say? He thought about it. In the end, Long Fu said, Master, Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon descended this time. According to their character, they would definitely kill you. But they didn't. At this point, Long Fu did not continue speaking. The meaning of his words was very clear. Longao did not continue asking. He knew that Long Fu definitely did not know about this. It was pointless to ask. The most important thing now was to find a way to leave the Long family. Long family was surrounded by Tong Zun. Once Longao appeared, one could imagine what kind of result it would be. At this moment, Tong Zun's face was dark. He did not expect that Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon, who were killed by the heavenly Tao back then, would not die. Instead, they chose to descend now. With the arrival of the man and the dragon, Tong Zun was sure of one thing. The heavenly Tao was not here. Tong Zun was confident that if the heavenly Tao was here, Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon would not dare to come out even if they were given 10,000 guts. In fact, when the Dragon Clan's seal was lifted, he should have thought that the heavenly Tao might have left. Otherwise, no one in the Tianwu continent would be able to lift the origin source seal unless the godly mathematician personally descended. But thinking about it, the godly mathematician would definitely not appear. Otherwise, the heavenly Tao would not dare to casually seal the Dragon Clan. Long Tian's sudden arrival had completely disrupted his plan. Originally, this was the best opportunity to kill Longao, but it was all ruined by Long Tian. If it wasn't for the fact that he wasn't completely confident, Tong Zun wouldn't have given Long Tian any face at all. In the end, Tong Zun was still very wary of Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon. Ancestor, does Longao dare to come out? Long Tian was obviously biased towards Longao. Everyone could see this point, but no one dared to say a single word of nonsense. How could Tong Zun not think of this possibility? On his side, everything was ready, and only Longao was left. But would Longao dare to come out? Long Tian played us. Looks like this matter is going to be a little tricky. Was he going to leave just like that? If he left and Longao appeared, he wouldn't even have the chance to regret it. Leave? Or not to leave? Let's wait for 3 more days. If Longao doesn't come out in 3 days, we'll go back and make further plans. Yes, Ancestor. Who would dare to disobey Tong Zun's orders? There were 9 Nirvana Realm martial artists in the Martial Artists Alliance, including Ren Tianxing. Previously, Ren Tianqing wasn't willing to submit to the Martial Artists Alliance, but ever since Tong Zun appeared, Ren Tianqing could be said to have obediently stayed in the Martial Artists Alliance. Even if it meant risking his life, Ren Tianqing didn't forget to flatter Tong Zun. Just like that, Tong Zun and the other 8 waited in front of the Long family, waiting for Longao to come out. The Tianwu continent was divided into 10 factions. The Long family, the Alchemy Guild, the Martial Artists Alliance, the Wanshou sect, the Heaven and Earth sect, the 5 Elements sect, the Wanzhan School, the Sword sect, the Purple Thunder sect, and the Black Heaven sect. The 10 factions were also known as the 1 clan, 2 alliances, 3 sects, and 4 sects. The strength of the 10 factions were similar. Under normal circumstances, no one could do anything to the other. Therefore, the 10 factions had always minded their own business. But now, with the arrival of Tong Zun and Long Tian, the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family's strength had obviously increased. They steadily suppressed the other 8 superpowers. The other 8 superpowers seemed to be very unhappy with this situation. As the saying goes, a mountain can't accommodate 2 tigers. The 2 ancestors of the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family had arrived at the same time. Unknowingly, the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family were against each other. Especially when Long Tian helped Longao and didn't give Tong Zun face. This made Tong Zun very unhappy. It seemed that he couldn't take it lying down. According to Tong Zun's plan, he was going to kill Longao in front of the Long family. However, Long Tian's sudden arrival disrupted everything. 3 days. Tong Zun guarded the Long family for 3 days, but he still didn't see Longao appear. Needless to say, Tong Zun was sure that Longao didn't dare to come out. Therefore, he had no choice but to return to the Martial Artists Alliance. The Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family were at each other's throats. Everyone knew that sooner or later the Martial Artists Alliance and the Long family would definitely go to war. 3 days later. After confirming that Tong Zun had left the Long family, Longao left the Dragon Seal space. He glanced left and right, then flew towards the distance. In the blink of an eye, his body had disappeared without a trace. Longao was very clear about the sudden appearance of Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon. It seemed that the grudge between him and the Long family would come to an end. As for the grudge between him and the Martial Artists Alliance, it would continue. However, with Tong Zun in the Martial Artists Alliance, it would be at least 10 times harder to deal with the Martial Artists Alliance now. He had nowhere to go. At this time, Muronguina found Longao again and invited Longao to the Sword sect. Somewhat curious, Longao didn't know why Muronguina would find him at this time. After all, Muronguina had already made it clear that with Tong Zun's deterrence, the Sword sect wouldn't help him. Since that was the case, what could he do even if he went to the Sword sect? There was no other way. Longao didn't want to continue causing trouble. Moreover, he also wanted to see why Muronguina had come to find him this time. As the Sword sect master, Muronguina couldn't be idle and cause trouble for no reason. Sword sect. Muronguina and Yixian were a little surprised that Longao hadn't died and had instead successfully left the Long family twice. The two of them were more and more certain that apart from having unlimited potential, Longao's strength, divine ability, and spatial divine tool were all indispensable. Longao had too many secrets on him. No matter who it was, not to mention a divine path warrior, even a Nirvana realm warrior wouldn't have the chance to successfully leave the Long family twice. It was impossible. Longao, did Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon really appear? Whether it was Muronguina or Yixian, they both wanted to verify whether Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon had really descended. It was one thing to hear about it, but it was another to actually verify it. Chapter 13:26. You called me here just to ask about this? Longao was a little depressed. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have come. However, Longao still nodded and said, Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon are not dead. If I'm not mistaken, they should be in a Long family. The news that Long Tian and the primordial divine dragon were still alive was no secret. Murongguina and Yi Xian both nodded. Their expressions were a little ugly. Longao, I've called you here mainly to tell you two things. Master, please tell me. Longao was very curious. He didn't know what Murongguina was talking about. Longao, if I'm not mistaken, you should be in the Earth God realm now. Yes, I just broke through. Just broke through. Yi Xian and Murongguina felt a little helpless. A few years ago, Longao was just a piece of trash in Scarlet Fire Town. In just a few short years, Longao went from a piece of trash to an Earth God realm martial artist. This kind of cultivation speed was completely unprecedented and would never be surpassed by anyone in the future. The two of them vaguely remembered that when Longao left the Sword Sect, he was still in the Man-God realm, and showed no signs of breaking through. However, Longao left the Sword Sect. In less than a month, Longao broke through from the Man-God realm to the Earth-God realm. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it even if they were beaten to death. It was hard to imagine. If Longao wasn't born in the 9 provinces continent, and was a disciple of the 10 great sects, then Longao's starting point would be higher and his achievements would be even higher. If Longao was a disciple of the Sword Sect, then how great would that be? Master, if you have something to say, please say it. Longao was very disgusted with the way he talked. If it weren't for Murongguina's identity, he would have already turned and left. Longao, although your cultivation speed is already very fast in this world, if you want to protect yourself and your family, your strength is far from enough. I believe you can understand that. He nodded. Longao didn't know what Murongguina wanted to say, but how could he not know the current situation of the continent? In this dog-eat-dog world, strength was everything. Without strength, he could only stand there and take a beating. With strength, he could do whatever he wanted. Longao, the Divine Way and the Supreme Divine Way are two different concepts. If you can break through the Supreme Divine Way, I believe you will be one step closer to the Nirvana realm. My grass. Longao cursed in his heart. Murongguina was still dawdling. How could he not know the difference between the Divine Tao and the Supreme Divine Tao? However, he had just broken through to the Earth God realm. Even if his talent was great, his cultivation was still one step at a time. It was impossible for him to rush in. Not to mention the Supreme Divine Way, just the Heavenly God realm, wanting to break through from the Earth God realm to the Heavenly God realm was not a simple matter. Could it be that Murongguina had a way? You guessed it? Thank you, Master. Longao was not a fool. When he saw Murongguina's expression, he already knew that Murongguina looked for him this time. If he could break through to the Supreme Divine Way realm as soon as possible, of course, it was something worth being surprised about. As Murongguina said, the Divine Way and the Supreme Divine Way were two different concepts. If he could break through to the Supreme Divine Way realm, then he would be one step closer to the Nirvana realm. Under normal circumstances, it was simply too difficult to break through from the Divine Way realm to the Supreme Divine Way realm. Longao, my method is actually very simple, which is to accept the succession. Longao did not say anything. He clearly knew that Murongguina must be aware of the consequences of accepting the succession. Once he accepted the succession, unless he could obtain a better one in the future, it would be more difficult for him to continue breaking through. If he wanted to obtain the succession, there would be plenty of opportunities. Why wait until now? As if he could guess Longao's thoughts, Murongguina smiled and said, Longao, the succession that I'm talking about is a little different from normal ones. Even if you obtain and refine it, it won't hinder your cultivation in the future. Oh? There was such a good thing? Longao did not expect that the succession would not be affected. Master, may I know what's going on? Longao smiled. Longao, we'll talk about this later. This time, I'm here mainly for two things. The first thing is your cultivation breakthrough. As for the second thing, I want to tell you that Yuin can't recover her consciousness casually. Yuin? When he heard Muronguina mention Yuin, Longao instantly became nervous. He could not wait to ask, Master, what's going on? Longao did not have time to help Yuin recover her consciousness. According to his previous decision, he would first settle the Long family, and then return to the Jiuzhou continent. In this way, he could devote himself to recovering her consciousness. However, Muronguina's meaning was very clear. Yuin could not recover her consciousness directly. Was there something fishy about this? Longao, I just received the news. In order to deal with you, the Martial Artists Alliance not only used a secret technique to make Yuin lose her consciousness, but also to devour her divine soul. Even if you can find a divine weapon to protect your divine soul, once she recovers her consciousness, Wan Yuin will be doomed. So that was it. Of course, Longao could understand Muronguina's meaning. In the end, the Martial Artists Alliance wanted to use Yuin to deal with him. It was a double insurance. Fortunately, he did not save Yuin and help Yuin recover her consciousness. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Now that he thought about it, he felt a trace of lingering fear. Longao did not know that once he saved Yuin and restored Yin's consciousness, causing Yin's divine soul to be devoured, what should he do then? Master, do you have any ideas? Muronguina certainly knew Longao's feelings for Yuin. For Yuin, Longao dared to make a scene in the Martial Artists Alliance alone. It was obvious that Longao loved Yuin very much. It was also because of this that Muronguina was so sad about this. Otherwise, he would not be looking for trouble. Longao, if you have a divine weapon to protect your divine soul, I can help you and Yuin recover her divine soul. Although I am not 100% sure, I am at least 95% sure. Longao finally knew why Murongja had asked him to come this time. Both matters were beneficial to him. Moreover, he had saved Yuin. It was still the same question. Why would the Sword Sect help him? Moreover, they had spared no effort to help him. If there wasn't something fishy about it, then he wouldn't believe it no matter what. However, since things had already come to this point, he had to save Yuin first. As for other things, he would think about it later. Chapter 13:27. He was very scared. According to Muronguina, it was fortunate that he did not make a move. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Longao was very anxious. Originally, he had planned to deal with the Long family and the Martial Artists Alliance, then return to the Jiuzhou continent to save Yuin. But now, Longao could not wait to leave the Dragon Sect and immediately rush to the Jiuzhou continent. With this lesson in mind, Longao would never let the tragedy happen again. Therefore, everyone in the Dragon Sect, including Dugabai and the others, did not continue to return to the Dragon Peak. Longao found an extremely secluded valley in the Jiuzhou continent. The new headquarters of the Dragon Sect was located in the secluded valley. Longao left more than 400 Divine Dragon Corps slaves and 10 Elder Corps slaves behind. With the current strength of the Dragon Sect, as long as it was not a Nirvana martial artist who attacked, the Dragon Sect would be able to deal with it easily. In the secluded valley? The valley was temporarily named the Dragon Valley by Longao. In the Dragon Valley? In just a few days, countless houses had appeared in the valley, and there was even a small palace. Longao's return was cheered by everyone because if it were not for Longao this time, they believed that all of them would have died. Until now, many people had yet to react. This was because the people who had captured them this time were the Martial Arts Alliance and the Long family. In everyone's eyes, they were super existences that were completely out of reach. That was exactly the case. Longao was now a godlike existence in the eyes of everyone in the Dragon Sect. Longao came back this time to take Yuin away. In the palace, After chatting for a while, Longao went straight to the point and said, "Grandfather, this time I'm going to take Yuen away and think of a way to save her. As for the dragon sect, I'll leave it to you." He nodded. Of course, Longhao sure knew the seriousness of the matter, especially when Yuen was Wang Yidao's granddaughter and was deeply in love with his grandson. No matter what, nothing could happen to Yuen. Or leave the dragon sect to me. Don't worry. He thought for a moment. Longhao sure sighed deeply, his face filled with vicissitudes of life. "Grandfather, what's wrong?" What you said is correct. There is indeed a traitor in our dragon sect. Furthermore, that traitor is your big brother. Brother? Dragonstone. Longao was also a bit surprised, because he had never thought that the person who betrayed the family this time would be his third brother, who was also his second uncle's son. If it had been anyone else, given his grandfather's personality, he would have long executed that person. However, Longshire's status was different. Even if it was Longhao, he would not be able to do it to his own grandson. As the saying goes, even a vicious tiger would not eat its cubs. "Grandpa, let me talk to third brother." Longhao nodded. After this incident, Longhao seemed to have aged a lot. If not for Longhao great improvement in cultivation, he might not have been able to hold on until now. Dragon Valley, within the prison. Other than Longhao and Long Yi, no one else knew that Long had betrayed the dragon sect. At the end of the day, Longhao and the others did not want to kill Long. Otherwise, if this matter were to spread, Long would become a sinner of the entire dragon sect. At that time, even if Longhao and the others were unwilling, they would not be able to do anything. Third brother. Long, who was sitting on the ground, had a face full of beard. He was not even 25 years old, but at this moment, he looked like a man in his 30s or even 40s. He looked as dispirited as he could possibly be. Seventh brother. Seeing Longao suddenly appear, Long was overjoyed at first. Then, he let out a deep sigh like a deflated balloon and said with self-blame, "Seventh brother, I deserve to die. Tell Grandpa that I, Long betrayed the family. Death is not enough for me." Deep brotherly love. How could Longao bear to kill his third brother? If that was the case, what would Grandpa do? What would Father do? What would second uncle do? What would the family do? "Third brother, I want to know why you did this." Longao knew very well that even if his third brother was a bit of a spoiled brat, he would never betray the family. Regardless of whether others would believe it, he would never believe it. Seventh brother. Third brother, if you still think of yourself as a member of the Long family, then tell me. It's not scary to make a mistake. What's scary is not being willing to face it. Third brother, I believe in you. I believe in you. I believe in you. Long suddenly raised his head and stared at Longao in front of him. He directly cried. No matter when, tears were like knees. It was the most precious thing for a man. But at this moment, Long cried. He cried so hard that it was a mess. Longao didn't try to persuade him because he knew that his third brother needed to be released. The more Long acted like this, the more he was sure that his third brother must have suffered. After an unknown amount of time. Seventh brother, not long ago, I went out to do something. Halfway, I was stopped by Long Hang. I don't know what happened, but my mind was controlled and I told him the location of the family. After that, I prepared to kill Long Hang, but he didn't kill me and didn't say anything. So that was what happened. If that was the case, then his third brother definitely wasn't a traitor. After all, with his third brother's power, how could he have resisted Long Hang's sole control? What a despicable and shameless Long Hang. Longao clenched his fists. His fury was like a volcano that was about to erupt. If he hadn't forcefully suppressed it, he would have long since erupted. Third brother, this matter isn't your fault. Come with me. Longao brought Long to Longhao and told him what had happened. After hearing it, Everyone agreed that Long sure hadn't betrayed the family. After all, he hadn't been able to act on his own volition. After dealing with the family's matters, Longao didn't hesitate in the slightest. He immediately brought Yuin with him to the Martial Heaven continent. The current Yuin was like a walking corpse. She did not have any consciousness. There was no joy, anger, sorrow, or joy. Her eyes were empty. Her entire body was emitting a deathly still aura. If it wasn't for the fact that Yuin was still able to walk and breathe, perhaps everyone would have thought that Yuin was already dead. On the way, Bai Ling took care of Yuin in every possible way. Longao was incomparably moved, but he didn't say anything. He knew that other than being kind, the biggest reason for Bai Ling's actions was him. Bai Ling, you must be tired. Rest for now. Leave Yuin to me. Having such a close female friend was a blessing. Longao felt sorry for Bai Ling, obediently nodding. Bai Ling transformed into a ball of white light and returned to the dragon seal space. The god-punishing sword had already been given to his reincarnation clone. As for Xiling and Bai Ling, they were directly transferred into the dragon seal space. Yuin, you'll be able to regain your consciousness in a bit more time. Without waiting for Longao to react, Yin's empty eyes suddenly shot out 2 rays of light, and her entire person underwent a huge change. Chapter 1328. Longao did not expect Yuin to attack him so suddenly. Yuin was not in her right mind. She might not even be able to recognize him, let alone attack him. But what happened in the end? Longao was hit by Yuin consecutively as he was caught off guard. After 18 consecutive palms, Longao flew out like a kite with a broken string before he could react. Yuin's strength was not what it used to be. Yuin had the strength of a nirvana realm, so one could imagine the power of her 18 consecutive palms. An ordinary person would have been dead by now. But Longao's situation was a little different. With the help of the holy body of desolation and Xiling's help, Longao's physical defense had reached an extremely terrifying level. Splat! Blood spurted out. Longao did not care about the pain in his body. He turned around and shot toward Yuin. Longao did not want to deal with Yuin. Instead, he wanted to see what happened to Yuin and why she attacked him. Before Longao could get close, 2 figures had already appeared and forcefully pulled him back. What's going on? Longao asked as he stared at Yuin. At this moment, Yuin's empty eyes were filled with murderous intent. Her body was releasing a terrifying murderous aura as if she was a killing machine. Was this still Yuin? Longao knew very well that this was definitely not Yuin's intention. Otherwise, Yuin would not have attacked him. Brother Long, Sister Yuin's situation is very bad. What's going on? Hearing Bai Ling's words, Longao became even more anxious and worried. He finally got the blood lotus and thought that Yuin could regain her consciousness. But now, if I'm not wrong, Sister Yuin's spiritual soul should be controlled by Tong Zun. What does that mean? What I'm trying to say is very simple. Yuin's soul was controlled by Tong Zun and she became his puppet. That's why she attacked you. Do you understand? Puppets. Hearing these 2 words, Longao's face was almost gloomy to the extreme. Of course, he knew what the puppet meant. What a good Tong Zun. Big Brother Long, you mustn't go there. Right now, Big Sister Yuin's main target is you. Bai Ling had just finished speaking. Yuin suddenly laughed crazily. Her laughter was filled with madness and disdain. It was like the laughter of another person. Longao, are you surprised? Actually, I'm also surprised that you didn't die. I have to admit that your defense is really abnormal. Tong Zun. Longao was certain that Yuin's silhouette was Tong Zun. Just as he expected. Just like what Xiling and Bai Ling said, Yuin was now controlled by Tong Zun, and she had become his puppet. Tong Zun, what do you want? Longao, don't you want to save Yuin? Alright, I can give you a chance. Come to the Martial Artists Alliance. Remember, you're alone. What if I don't go? Ha 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 ha. Laughing crazily, Tong Zun sneered and said, "Do you believe that I can make Yin commit suicide?" Right now. Longao didn't have the slightest doubt. Since Tong Zun was able to control Yin's soul, then there was no doubt that as long as Tong Zun was willing, Yin could commit suicide at any time. Even if she didn't commit suicide, as long as Tong Zun was willing, she could self-destruct. Let go of Yin and I can go to the Martial Artists Alliance alone. Do you think I'll believe you? You made a blood oath before and you still left. Tong Zun was very confident that Longao could make a scene at the Martial Artists Alliance for Yin, even at the risk of his own life. This showed how much Longao loved Yin. That was right. After Tong Zun failed to kill Longao with the help of Yin, he immediately thought of this idea. He wanted to make Longao come to the Martial Artists Alliance. When the time came, he would close the door and beat the dog. This time, Tong Zun was ready. Longao knew how shameless Tong Zun was. But how could he not go? Tong Zun, you and I are both smart people. There's no need to waste time. I can go to the Martial Artists Alliance, but you have to let go of Yin first. I believe you've already set up a trap. If you still let me go, you and the Martial Artists Alliance can go to hell. What Longao said was the truth. Under the trap set up by the Martial Artists Alliance, if he could still leave the Martial Artists Alliance, then the Martial Artists Alliance wouldn't have the face to continue attacking him. Ha ha ha, Longao, since you said that you and I are both smart people, then I'll tell you the truth. I won't let go of Yin unless you come here personally. As for whether you can save Yin, it depends on your luck and strength. What should he do? Longao was in a dilemma. As for Bai Ling and Ziling, they had already returned to the Dragon Seal space. No matter what, the two sword spirits weren't at their peak strength. Not to mention dealing with Tong Zun, he believed that the two of them wouldn't even be able to deal with an ordinary Nirvana Realm warrior. Tong Zun, you've gone too far. At the same time, a sword chi streaked across the sky. Before Longao could react, a middle-aged man had already appeared. Seeing this man, Longao's face suddenly changed, as if he couldn't believe it. This man was none other than the old ancestor of the sword sect, Jian Tian. Longao had met Jian Tian before, and Jian Tian had even helped him. That was why Longao had never expected Jian Tian to appear. Wasn't Jian Tian sealed and even killed? Seeing Jian Tian's appearance and Long Tian's and Tong Zun's arrival, Longao's intuition told him that the 10 great ancestors had not really fallen. They were just hiding to cultivate. For some reason, these old monsters kept appearing one after another. Could it be that something was going to happen? Jian Tian, are you going to help Longao too? I'll give you 2 hours. After saying that, Jian Tian didn't continue speaking. Longao didn't say anything either. As for Yin, she was in a daze. Her eyes were empty, as if she had returned to her previous state. 2 hours later. In the distant void, a black dot appeared. The black dot was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, Tong Zun had already appeared. He looked coldly at Longao and Jian Tian and sneered. Jian Tian, we haven't seen each other for 10,000 years. I didn't expect you to appear at this time. 2 hours. In just 2 hours, Tong Zun had rushed over from the Martial Artists Alliance. From this, one could imagine how fast Tong Zun was. Longao was prepared to enter the Dragon Seal space at any time. Who knew if he was a friend or foe today? What if he was an enemy? Wouldn't he be a lamb in a tiger's den? Tong Zun, cut the crap. Longao is under my protection. Chapter 1329. Longao is under my protection. Just one sentence was enough to express Jian Tian's attitude. Longao heaved a sigh of relief. Regardless of Jian Tian's intentions, at the very least, only a supreme expert like Jian Tian could suppress Tong Zun under the current circumstances. It would be difficult to save Yuen on his own. Thank you, Semir. You're welcome. Longao heaved a sigh of relief, but Tong Zun's face turned gloomier. Until now, Tong Zun still could not figure out why Jian Tian would suddenly appear and help Longao. Could it be that Jian Tian and Longao knew each other? It seemed impossible. Tong Zun did not expect that Longao, a mere disciple of the Long family, could cause such a commotion in Tianwu continent. Even Jian Tian and Long Tian were willing to offend him to protect Longao. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed it. Jian Tian, since you want to protect Longao, I will take my leave. To Tong Zun, it was not worth it to fall out with Jian Tian for Longao. In fact, Tong Zun was very wary of Jian Tian. No one knew what would happen in 10,000 years. Even Tong Zun had no idea how powerful Jian Tian would be. What if he was no match for Jian Tian? Moreover, Jian Tian was so arrogant that Tong Zun was unsure. Tong Zun, leave Yuen behind! What a joke. If Tong Zun left, Yuen's life would be in danger. With Tong Zun's strength, even if they were 10,000 miles apart, he could destroy Yuen with his divine thought. That was why Longao would not let Tong Zun leave even if he had to fight to the death with Jian Tian. Longao, for the sake of Jian Tian, I'll spare your life. You'd better shut up or else, humph! Before Tong Zun could finish his words, Jian Tian snorted loudly. Tong Zun, you better leave alone. If anything happens to this girl, I will personally kill my way to the Martial Artists Alliance. My grass. Jian Tian's overbearingness made Tong Zun a little angry, but he didn't dare to do anything. The more Jian Tian acted like this, the more Tong Zun didn't dare to make a move. Who knew how strong Jian Tian was? Jian Tian, what do you want? Let go of this girl. As for the grudge between you and Longao, I won't interfere for 100 years. 100 years. If it were anyone else, Tong Zun wouldn't care about them at all. However, Longao's situation was completely different. Longao was simply too unpredictable. To be able to improve to such a level in just a few years was already a testament to Longao's talent and potential. Jian Tian, do you really think I'm afraid of you? Tong Zun was very unhappy. 10,000 years ago, the two of them were about the same in terms of strength. Since he did not make any breakthroughs in the past 10,000 years, he believed that Jian Tian would not make any breakthroughs either. Ha ha, Tong Zun, you're still the same. Why don't we fight? If I win, the grudge between you and Longao will be written off and you'll let go of this girl. If I lose, I'll kill myself right here. How about that? Challenge. Jian Tian issued a challenge to Tong Zun. Longao stepped aside. He believed in Jian Tian's strength. Otherwise, Jian Tian wouldn't have acted so rashly. This time, it was Tong Zun's turn to feel helpless. Do I really have to accept the challenge? Tong Zun knew that if he accepted the challenge and lost, not only would he have to let go of Longao and Yuen, he might even lose his life. Tong Zun, don't you dare? Jian Tian, there's no need for us to fight. How about this? I'll let go of Yuen immediately. However, I won't deal with Longao personally. As long as Longao enters the ancient battlefield, no matter how the battle turns out, as long as Longao comes out alive, the grudge between us will be written off. Ancient battlefield? What's that? Longao wasn't a fool. Since Tong Zun had asked him to enter the primordial battlefield, the so-called primordial battlefield would definitely be extraordinary. As expected. Hearing Tong Zun's suggestion, Jian Tian's face turned pale. He didn't make a decision but turned to Longao and asked, Longao, what do you think? Tong Zun, are you really willing to let go of Yuen? There's no need for me to lie to you in front of Jian Tian. If I can't do it, I'm afraid Jian Tian won't agree. Longao didn't doubt Jian Tian's words at all. With Jian Tian's arrogance and strength, he believed that Tong Zun wouldn't dare to play any tricks. After giving it some thought, Longao nodded and agreed. No problem. Ha, great. Longao, I'll wait for you at the ancient battlefield. As Tong Zun spoke, he shot out a stream of air from his finger, and it entered Yi Yin's mind. In the next moment, Yi Yin seemed to have been electrocuted. She trembled and regained her consciousness. Goodbye, Jian Tian. Goodbye. After Tong Zun left, Longao heaved a sigh of relief. He immediately held on to Yu Yin, who had fainted, and said helplessly, "Thank you, Senior Jian Tian. If it wasn't for you, I really wouldn't know what to do. Longao, the ancient battlefield is about to open. Since you've promised Tong Zun, follow me. I'll tell you about the ancient battlefield." Okay. Longao wasn't worried at all. Yu Yin's soul had regained consciousness. Even so, Longao still placed the blood-colored lotus into Yu Yin's body. This way, Yu Yin would be safe. The two of you must send Yu Yin back to the Dragon Valley. Longao didn't trust anyone in this situation. In the end, he could only hand Yu Yin over to Long Ming and Long Chang. The dragon and tiger would definitely be able to send Longao back to the Dragon Valley. Long Ming and Long Chang nodded. The two godly beasts knew that this was a difficult task. Without any hesitation, the two godly beasts left quickly with Yu Yin. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared without a trace. Senior, please. Let's go. Jian Tian obviously wanted to test Longao's speed. With a whoosh, he left. However, Longao had spatial teleportation. In terms of speed, even if Tian Dao was here, he wouldn't be afraid. Longao used spatial teleportation to constantly disappear and reappear. Just like that, Longao followed closely behind Jian Tian. Jian Tian was a little surprised. He didn't expect Longao to be so fast. He was very impressed. The two of them were as fast as a breeze. In less than 2 hours, they had successfully returned to the Sword Sect. Murong Feng Nian and Yi Xian seemed to have already known that the old ancestor had arrived. Although they were pleasantly surprised, they were not too surprised. As for Longao, who had followed the old ancestor back, the two of them looked at each other and laughed. With the old ancestor's arrival, they no longer had to be afraid of the Martial Art Alliance. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.